Good afternoon. I want to call this work session of the Durham City Council to order at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, December the 22nd. I certainly want to welcome everyone here today, my colleagues, our wonderful city staff, and others who are here with us on this call or who may be watching or listening in some other way. We're very glad to have you today. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freelon.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Middleton.
Here.
Councilmember Reese.
I am ho here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good to see you, colleagues, and especially in your holiday decor. We will now proceed to announcements by the council. I'm going to ask if there are announcements by any of my colleagues. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, colleagues and staff and everyone watching along at home. This is our last City Council meeting of the year. Our work session is on Tuesday, which is unusual. And I thought this would be a good time just to say thank you to the thousands of city employees who have been making our community and our government work over these long months of the pandemic. This city would have ground to a halt but for the efforts of countless city employees, whether they're the folks who come by and pick up your garbage or the folks that make sure our streets are repaired, that our water system is continuing to work, even to the point of digging up and finding and plugging leaks in the middle of this difficult time. The people who keep our buses rolling through our streets, and the folks within our transportation department who planned an expansion of transit service even during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that doesn't even begin to talk about the debt that we owe the folks who respond first to crises, be it our firefighters, our police officers, our paramedics. So I just wanted to take a few moments this afternoon to say how grateful I am to all of our employees for the incredible work that they have done during the COVID-19 pandemic. We will never be able to repay the debt that we owe them for all of the sacrifices they made so that we could live some semblance of a normal life. And so I just wanted to say thank you to those folks. Thank you also to our city manager, Wanda Page, and her staff for leading us through this unbelievable time. Also want to say thanks to our former city manager, Tom Bonfield, who got us going down this road in a very safe and responsible way. And also wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our city attorney, Kim Rayberg, and our city clerk, Dinah Schreiber. Those are two of our three employees that the council employs. Y'all have done extraordinary work under difficult circumstances, and I couldn't be prouder of you and for the rest of the city employees. So just with that, I just want to say thank you and happy holidays to everybody, and I look forward to a productive meeting today.
Councilmember, thank you. I'm going to ask any of our city employees who are on the call, who are not in their pajamas or who are in their pajamas and don't mind showing us, if you would turn your cameras on so we can give you the thanks that you deserve. We only have maybe 40 of our employees on this call out of the 2,700 or whatever the number is now, but we appreciate you, we love you, and I really thank Councilmember Reese for bringing us that super message. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to see your faces. Can I also say that one of the really bad parts of the pandemic is that I miss you. I know that we all do. And what Charlie expressed is a powerful and important message. So I'm looking forward to the day in 2021 where we're back together in person. And we're meeting together in person, not just because it's important for the work, because you are amazing people and we miss you. So thank you. All right, other announcements by members of the council. Anyone else? Councilmember Caballero.
Just real quickly, there is a amazing astronomy in the sky right now. For those of you who've been paying attention, the Great Conjunction lasts for several days. We were able to see it yesterday. Tonight we're going to go socially distance with a neighbor who has a telescope to see even more clearly. I think that as my council colleague yesterday, Councilmember Middleton, indicated, a hopeful sign of a much better year to come.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Any other announcements? All right, thank you so much, colleagues. And now I'll ask if there are any priority items by the city manager.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I do have several priority items for your consideration today. Agenda item number 5, which is temporary outdoor seating permit extension. The original temporary outdoor dining ordinance that was approved by City Council on July 1st, 2020 is set to expire on December 31st, 2020. So staff is seeking to extend the validity of this temporary ordinance until such a time as there is no longer a state of emergency due to COVID-19. We are also asking that the rules be suspended today on agenda item number 7, and that is a contract with Open Table Ministry Incorporated for White Flag Cold Weather Emergency Shelter. Again, that temporary plan is expected to end on December 31st, 2020, after which there will be no provision to shelter unsheltered homeless persons when the temperature is 32 degrees or below, or 37 degrees or below with inclement weather. So we'd like for council to suspend the rules and vote on those 2 items. Also, agenda item number 14, contract ST 286 Petition Streets 2021. Attachment 1 has been updated. Agenda item number 19, COVID-19 update. We have a 20-minute presentation scheduled, and we would like that presentation to begin at 1:15 today. And attachment number 7 has been added. And finally, agenda item number 27, Ms. Stella Adams is a citizen, bringing a citizen's matter before the council today. It is a supplemental item, and attachment 4 from Ms. Adams has been added. That is all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager. And let me just say that your attire is much appreciated in this holiday season.
Trying to bring light.
You are bringing the light. You definitely are. All right. Can we have a motion on the manager's priority items, please?
I move that we support the manager's priority items.
Does that include the necklace?
And that includes the necklace.
All right. Is there a second?
And Mayor Pro Tem.
Second. I forgot I had one of those too. I forgot to put it on.
All right. Councilmember Freeman made the motion, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schewel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it and the motion passes unanimously. Now we'll move to our city attorney. Madam Attorney, welcome. Any priority items today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council. It's good to see you all. I do not have any priority items, but I would like to say one little thing, if I could. Thank you so much, Councilmember Reese, for your acknowledgement, and thanks to me. I appreciate that, but I cannot accept that without acknowledging the 11 people who work with me. They have been incredible this year and have done some really creative work under very difficult circumstances. And it's been a year that's been hard for everyone, but particularly in the legal profession. Folks have experienced burnout at really tremendous rates, and they have borne the pressures well. And I just want to thank them for a year well done.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. And thank you for that shout out to the fabulous attorney staff. All right, Madam Clerk, any priority items from the clerk's office?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I did want to remind you about the special meeting that is coming up in January, and I haven't heard from everybody about your schedules. So if you could let me know if you can make the January 12th or the 14th meeting at 9 a.m., I would appreciate it. And I do appreciate all the kind words that were said about the city employees. I agree with City Attorney Rayberg about her staff. My staff has been outstanding. And I know that we're all working together and we're just waiting for COVID to be brought under control. So I'm wishing everyone a happy new year and hopefully riddance of COVID.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Steve, can I jump in for a quick second? Of the 2 dates for that meeting, I have on my calendar that there's a joint city county meeting on the 12th at 9 a.m. Do other folks have that? Is that a correct?
Yes, and also on the 14th at 9 a.m. I have an Office of Workforce, a Workforce Development meeting at 9 a.m. as well.
We might need to get some other
Okay.
options because I think at least 3 of us will be at joint city county.
I didn't know that Joint City County was on the 12th. I should know that since I'm chairing it.
Mr. Mayor,
Mm-hmm.
the next joint city county is scheduled for February.
Oh, that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
So that day is open for joint city county.
Great. Thank you.
thank
Is
you.
that Joint City County or Joint City County Planning in February?
Joint City County is in February. I'm not sure about Joint City County Planning,
Yeah. All right.
but we can ask, I believe, yeah, go ahead. Councilmember Caballero.
I have joint city county planning on Wednesday, February 3rd.
Okay. So it sounds like they're both in February.
They're both,
Thank you.
okay, all right.
Thank you for that clarification and thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem, and so if you all could try to respond to the city clerk soon, because I know she wants to go ahead and get that announced, and thank you all. Okay. Let's see here. Next, we will go through the administrative consent items. Under the city clerk's office, approval of city council minutes, excellent minutes. Under item 2, Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment. Item 3, Durham City County Appearance Commission appointment. Item 4, Raleigh Durham Airport Authority appointment. Item 5, under departmental items, temporary outdoor seating ordinance extension. This item was one of the priority items by the city manager, and she has asked that we suspend the rules and vote on this item. I'm going to go through all the administrative consent items, and then we'll deal with item 5 at the appropriate time. Under the city manager's office, amendment to Youth Initiatives Manager Interlocal Agreement. Under item 7, Community Development Department contract with Open Table Ministry for a White Flag Cold Weather Emergency Shelter. This item also is a priority item by the manager. We'll come back to that. Under Department of Transportation, item 8, TIP number C5605E, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality CMAQ Improvement Program Bike Lane Supplemental Municipal Agreement. I want to pull item 8.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. Item 6 and 7, you were going so fast. I wanted to pull those items.
Okay, item 7 is pulled, but we'll pull item 6.
Okay.
And so item 6 is amendment to Youth Initiatives Manager Interlocal Agreement. I am sorry. It's hard to read these things and look around. So please just shout it out. And thank you, council member. Item 9, TIP number C5605H, Downtown Durham Wayfinding Supplemental Municipal Agreement.
I'm gonna
Item
pull
10.
that.
Item 9.
Yep.
Okay, item 10, TIP number C5605I, Neighborhood Bike Route Supplemental Municipal Agreement.
I would like to pull that as well.
All right. Item 11, bid report, November 2020. Item 12, Office of Economic and Workforce Development, City of Durham Employment and Training 2020-2022 Grant Project Ordinance Superseding Ordinance number 15708.
Mr. Mayor, on to pull 11 and 12. And actually
Okay.
for 11, I just wanted to make a comment to note that I guess because we have the presentation today, I don't need to make the suggestions. And so I just want to note that I appreciate that the staff is gathering the information on the bids, and then just leave number 11 so the presentation is over.
Can you say that again about item 11?
Just pulling item 12.
Okay.
But for item 11, just noting appreciation that the staff is pulling together the information.
Thank you. So item 12 is pulled. Under the police department, item 13, Durham City County Interlocal Agreement for continuation of the gang reduction strategy.
I want to pull that item as well.
Okay. Item 14, contract ST 286 Petition Streets 2021. Item 15, contract SW 76C inspections and ombudsman services for sidewalk repair projects. Item 16, contract WS 85 sewer extension on Garrett and Mimosa. I want to pull item 16. Item 17, utility extension agreement with Merck Sharp and Dome Corp. And the County of Durham. Under Technology Solutions Department, item 18, software as a service contract with Plotbox Inc. Under Presentations, Budget and Management Services Department, item 19, COVID-19 update. Under the City Manager's Office, City of Durham Office on Youth 2020 update. Under the Finance Department, City Contractor Workforce Diversity. Under Public Hearings, Community Development Department, item 22, FY21-22 Annual Action Plan needs public hearing. Under Office of Economic and Workforce Development, item 23, Economic Development Incentive with Bookman Commercial Holdings, Inc. Item 24, Economic Development Incentive with Ideal Sandwich Shop, LLC. Under item 25, Economic Development Incentive with the Clorox Company. Item 26, Economic Development Incentive with Nuvotronics, Inc. Under Supplemental items, Citizens Matter, Stella Adams. Those are the items on our agenda. Madam Manager, let me go over what I believe that we have, and let's see if you and I can agree. Items 5 and 7 were pulled for to suspend the rules and vote today. Item 27 is the Citizens Matters, which we will hear immediately following this part of our agenda. The pulled items are items 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 16. And we have then the presentations, which are items 18, 19, and 20. Do you agree, Madam Manager?
That is exactly what I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, thank you very much. What I would like to do is go ahead, hear from Ms. Adams. Then we will take up the, I'll ask the manager. Madam Manager, would you like us to take the poll items first, or would you like to take the items that need the action today first?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have a preference.
Okay.
You know, we're with the exception of the time, presentation with the time around it.
And that one, the one that we want to go ahead and have first is the first presentation is that you want is item 18. Is that correct?
It actually is item 19 is the one that we need to have at 1:15 if possible.
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah. 19, 20, and 21. Right. And would you like that presentation before the poll items?
We do have some, Rod Jenkins, our public health director, and some others. So we really want to make sure, the pulled items, it's a lot of pulled items. We want to make sure that we get to that presentation at 1:15. So that's our priority.
All right, great. Thank you. So colleagues, just taking my guidance from the manager, then we'll hear from Ms. Adams. Then we will have the presentation on item 19. Then we'll go back to the pulled items, and then we'll go to the final two presentations. and then we'll be on holiday. Okay. I'm going to ask if the clerk could make Ms. Stella Adams available to be heard.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Adams, welcome. I just want to let folks know that you had asked to speak on a couple different matters, one on our agenda and also on citizens matters. So I've combined those and given you 5 minutes, and we're very glad to have you.
Thank you. Susan, greetings to you all, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on behalf of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. The Durham Committee has several concerns and questions regarding how exactly bids are noticed, reviewed, and let. The Durham Committee is concerned that in the November bid report, only 2 of the 16 contracts let inured to the benefit of Durham firms. And this is a chart showing that disparity. Durham firms are in the blue. The Durham Committee is also concerned by the disproportionate number of single bidders. And we believe that this is a result of inefficient marketing and burdensome and cumbersome RFPs that are issued around these bids. We'd like to bring to the council's attention the rebid of the repainting of the Urban R Homes Recreation Center at Campus Hills. The work plan states that the successful bidder would paint the ceiling, ducts, structural steel beams, and a masonry wall. If you were looking as a small painter with a small paint company to bid on this very simple process, you would have to wade through a 129-page RFP. That's ridiculous. There is no state requirement that an RFP be that large. And we see this as a real barrier to participation for small firms. The paint job should fall under the Small Local Business Enterprise Program. The City of Durham adopted a Small Local Business Enterprise Program allegedly to increase employment opportunities for city residents and to enhance the city's tax base by promoting city contracting opportunities for small local business enterprises. If a contract is in the Small Business Enterprise Program, it will be awarded only to a small local business in the city. This is an ordinance. Section 18-86 of the City Code discusses the criteria for the selection of contracts under the program, and it appears that every single contract in this month's bid report is in violation of that ordinance, with the exception of the 2 that were given. The City of Durham must do its part to aid in the survival and success of local Black-owned and minority businesses. The city must strengthen its supplier diversity and procurement programs to local small business enterprises as a means of securing necessary operational services. The city must implement its programs in secure, trusted financial partners that can assist the minority and women entrepreneurs through the process of leveraging city resources such as transit and transportation planning, CDBG, home, and affordable housing bonds. We are no longer interested in weak attempts at best efforts. We are only interested in results. We will not be appeased with ink on paper promises. We demand jobs, contracts, and accountability. We need you to think differently. We need you to act on the promises that you've made. racial equity lens doesn't mean anything if there's not, you don't take the lens cap off. And sadly, the city of Durham has not taken the lens cap off and actualized its efforts. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I ask that this presentation be put in the record, and I am available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Ms. Adams, thank you. We were not able to see the chart that you tried to post. If you would email that to us, that would be great.
I will certainly do that.
Thank you. I'm going to first ask City Manager Page if she has any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to mention that if council would, in refreshing I legislate the PowerPoint presentation that Ms. Adams was speaking from as part of that agenda item. It was updated very late, but it is in the presentation. So you will have that available to you. I will actually ask Mr. David Boyd, our Finance Director, to also come on screen to speak very, very briefly to some of the comments that have been received by council from Ms. Adams today, particularly as it relates to the bid report that is part of the agenda today. And certainly if we can respond to any other questions that the council may have today, we will do that. But certainly, we have received her comments and her presentation for our information and to respond to any council questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager Page. Mr. Boyd, good to see you. We're happy to hear your remarks.
Thank you, David Boyd, Finance Director. I just wanted to make a couple clarifications on the bid report specifically. That report contains only a report to you all on purchases of goods more than $10,000 and less than $300,000. $10,000 is the floor at which we have any type of kind of formal process for procurement, and then $300,000 is the limit at which you, as the council, would have to approve the contract. So it does not include any service contracts, construction repair contracts. And then I think more importantly, this is the one area where the city has the least amount of flexibility in terms of how we award, where we must award the contract for the purchase of goods to the lowest price bidder. Although we do have processes within the organization requiring that those folks that are going out to look for goods search the state hub database for those folks that are providing those types of goods, and to notice them of our procurement and give them an opportunity to respond as well. But the group of purchases that Ms. Adams is referring to is a very, very small subset of all of the activity that took place in November. I think, just looking at the numbers roughly, I think there was about $835,000 worth of purchases of goods on the bid report, while we probably procured something north of $28 million worth of large good purchases or other services or construction contracts during that time period. So I just want to make that clarification that that's not the entirety of all the activity during the month.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Let me just make one observation and then ask a question. My observation is that, and we've had this situation a lot in the past, that seeking out, we have in a way competing priorities at times. We are both working, as you said, to actively seek out minority contractors through the hub database, which is a state database. And we have an ambition to have local contractors. And oftentimes those two things are in conflict. Most of the contractors that we end up getting from the hub database are not from here in Durham. And so I just want to, again, say to the council that these are competing priorities that we have, and sometimes they don't work in concert. My question is, though, to the administration, I think it would be useful to have, and you could do it any way you wanted. You could do a month, or, I'm not sure what the best format would be, but some sort of presentation to us in the future that maybe gave a more comprehensive look at the contracts with an eye towards some specificity around the issues that Ms. Adams raised, not just for the bid report, but for our other contracts as well. I know that we're doing a huge piece of work of that today. We have a very exciting presentation today on some work that the administration, our city attorney have done to be able to include hiring, employment statistics in consideration in RFPs and certain contracts. And I want to really appreciate that and highlight that. But I wonder if there could be some more additional work done on this in a way that the administration thinks would be most helpful to us.
Mr. Mayor, we will be happy to bring, a presentation back to council that, really talks about all of the areas that we, have procurement in today. As David mentioned, it is just, our material apparatus and supplies that are within a certain range of cost. But certainly we have, contracts on the agenda that are part of other ways that we procure services. I would like to just mention that there is nothing that is before the council that is not in alignment with state purchasing law or any of the ordinances that we have in place. We're very careful that we bring things to you that have been vetted for that purpose. But we certainly want to engage the community's questions. We want to provide feedback on any kind of questions or comments that come our way and put it in perspective. Obviously, you all know that we would like to have better outcomes in the end, so that more of our minority and women-owned local businesses are part of the recipient base of contracts that we enter into. And we've been working in that space for a long time. We do not have all of the results that we would like to have as a community and as an organization, but we can continue to work in that space and continue to be transparent and continue to bring information to you for your decision making.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Any other comments or questions, colleagues? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City Manager Page. I appreciate the presentation from Ms. Stella Adams, and I just want to note that she really made clear points in adding her presenter notes on the presentation if you get the chance to see it. And so I'm not sure if City Manager Page has had an opportunity to see it, but I know that the one question that raises up for me is what resources are in place to support a small business, a small local business in competing for that RFP. And so noting that the 129-page project may be a necessary evil, who in the city's equity and inclusion office is responsible for supporting a small business, or in the workforce and development, who actually noting who on our staff is available for that, and noting if there needs to be more folks allocated to support is important, acknowledging that COVID-19 is forcing a lot of our small businesses out of business. And as much as we'd like to support the hub database statewide, I'd much rather put resources, whether it's allocating staff resources or adding additional staff towards supporting our local small businesses. And so just noting that it'd be nice to hear in that presentation for the future who is actually directed to support those small business owners and going through this RFP process.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank Ms. Adams for her presentation and thank our friends at the Durham Committee for the Affairs of Black People for centering us today. I want to say two things. I think one, this is, again, I think this crystallizes for us something that I've called the unsexy part of the work of race equity, the heavy lift part. The fact of the matter is that we're in alignment with state statutory standards. But the reality is what the Durham Committee is pointing out is that's precisely the problem. And that's how systemic inequities work. They're historic. They build upon one another. The reason why a lot of companies are able to provide us with goods at a lower price is because economies of scale. They've had a lot of time to build up wealth and to build, like a Walmart, to build up goods, storehouses of goods where they can supply those goods at a lower price. And that's because of historic head starts. So this is why we've got to press our delegation at the legislature to continue to press for things like, and Councilor Freeman has given voice to this constantly at the state level, studying race equity, studying reparations, studying the systemic and historical reasons why so many of our small minority-owned companies are unable to compete. And I appreciate Mr. Boyd putting it in context that the slice of what we're looking at. But oftentimes, you know, in our community, that's what we have to deal with, small slices at first to get to a point where we can play in the big leagues. I would hope that this would spur us even more. The second thing I want to say is to fully exploit the supply chain that our shared economic prosperity plan talks about as a city. And I hope that we will give that renewed energy. I know COVID has really wreaked havoc with a lot of things, but in 2021, give renewed energy and attention to our shared economic prosperity plan that focuses on opportunities in our supply chain universally to give economic opportunity for smaller companies and small players. And so we've got to do it on multiple fronts, do everything we can to exploit opportunities in our supply chain at the municipal level and continue to push at the state level for an understanding of systemic inequities, what equity is, and to begin to shape our values in the legislature to allow us to provide more opportunity. But this is precisely, and I want to thank the Durham Committee for this aha moment. This is precisely what it looks like. And you don't have to be a racist or a bad person. It's already baked into the equation, and it just compounds on itself and it builds upon itself, and it brings all of these circumstances and outcomes, wrapped in the veneer of legality, and it seems inevitable. Oh, this is just the way it is, when in actuality, it's by design. So I hope this is a wake-up call for us, and I thank the Durham Committee for their continued trumpeting of these issues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Any further comments? All right, Ms. Adams, we really appreciate you being here. And you've heard us ask our staff for more information that I think will be informative to us. I know the manager will figure out the best way to make that presentation to us thoughtfully. And I also want to let you know, Ms. Adams, that later on in the meeting, we do have a presentation that I think that is a really big step forward in exactly what we're talking about today. And I want to appreciate you for, I really want to appreciate you for bringing this to us. All right. We are now going to move on to item 19. And this is, hang on one second while I pull that up. This is a presentation that is on our COVID-19 update. We have some friends here from who are not from our city staff, so we want to go ahead and do this first. And I just want to appreciate them for being here. Let's see, who from the staff is going to be leading us through this discussion?
Good afternoon, Mayor Schul, Ryan Smith, Innovation and Performance Manager with the City of Durham. We will start off by hearing from our Public Health Director, Rodney Jenkins. These slides are actually for the second part of that presentation, but I'd like to turn it over now to Director Jenkins. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Can I ask Ryan, could you take the slides down until we get Mr. Jenkins after Mr. Jenkins? Yeah. Thanks a lot. Mr. Jenkins,
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. It's always great to see you. And for the most part, extend greetings to the rest of the council and Manager Page and leadership team. Thank you so much for all of your support during our COVID efforts. It is indeed a pleasure to give you a brief update. I would be remiss in saying that it's been a pleasure to work with the mayor and the Recovery and Renewal Task Force and many others. I feel as if not being able to physically meet the mayor, but I feel as if I've been talking with the mayor for quite some time over the past couple of months, and it's been a pleasure to work with him. I bring you greetings on a historic day in Durham County Department of Public Health, where we have begun vaccinating our EMS personnel and our frontline staff. It's a pleasure to say that some semblance of COVID relief is here, other than the 3 Ws. So far, things are going well, and I'll be more than happy to give you some additional updates as I continue on my presentation. Again, I was given about 10 to 15 minutes. I know we have a lot to discuss, so I'll just kind of get into it. Our numbers are still reflecting activity from Thanksgiving, and unfortunately, a lot of Durhamites and others did not really heed our warnings about gatherings. At one point in time, as you can recall, a lot of our cases were can kind of be pigeonholed to specific demographics, and unfortunately, right now, that's not the case. We're starting to see a lot of COVID fatigue, a lot of mask wearing fatigue, and simply, we're just starting to see Thanksgiving gatherings coming to roost. Unfortunately, our current active total is 1,033 active cases. Inactive cases, 12,970. That's how many Durhamites have beat COVID. Deaths, just like the rest of the state, are up. We're at about 137 total deaths. Our thoughts and prayers are always with the families that have lost loved ones to this very real and present respiratory pathogen, which is COVID. Total cases since the pandemic began, 14,145 total cases. We continue to trend upward, unfortunately. Our 7-day moving average is the highest that it has been since the pandemic began. As of Monday, it was 145 cases. This is an increase of 129 last week and 95 the previous week. It is indicative of the surge that we're currently experiencing. But as I say to my staff all the time, what goes up truly must come down. So far in the month of December, 1,882 total cases. So again, we can see North Carolina and Durham's lab confirmed cases are increasing. We keep a racial equity lens on all that we do, and we really focus on racial equity in our reporting. Our Hispanic Latinx continue to be overrepresented in Durham, as far as Durhamites at 22.14% of all of our cases for the month of December. That is still significantly lower than it was this past summer. We do realize that we have a lot more work to do. Our Black or African American community in Durham continues to be overrepresented in the month of December at 41.32% of our cases. We know that they represent 37% of all Durham County's residents, and our white population has been underrepresented relatively all of the pandemic. Currently, they're at 24.98% of all cases, and they represent 54% of all of Durham's population. Where are we seeing the cases professionally are in hospitals, nursing care facilities, and just really general construction. Hospitals represent the biggest impact to African-American females. 51.25% of all our cases are coming from hospitals, and 76.25% of females are being impacted in those settings. In nursing care facilities, African-Americans are continuing to be impacted. 58.82% are female, and 48.53% of all of our cases are coming from nursing care facilities. And as far as professional, scientific, or technical services, our white population, particularly females, at 61.82% are being affected, but they also represent 43.64% of all of our cases. Our positive lab percentages are not good. It's right at 7.6% as of last week. The prior week was 6.3%. We are fortunate to have Duke's model that is provided to us every Wednesday by Morgan Jones. A special shout out to them. Duke's models of infection had North Carolina's infection being at 10.1% and Durham's infection being right at 7.8%. So we can see by the two models that our 7.6, 7.8% is per day. We continue to monitor the effect of COVID in our school-age children. And so far in the month of December, we are certainly seeing not too much of a percentage growth, but 13.36% of all of our cases are involving school-age children, 56 total cases. I'd like to pivot, if you don't mind, to COVID vaccinations in Durham and how things are going. As I mentioned earlier, COVID vaccine has been in Durham since last week, Monday. Duke Hospital was the first to receive the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, and they began vaccinating individuals as early as Tuesday, from what I'm being told. We are currently in phase 1A. Durham Department of Public Health at 8:10 a.m. on yesterday received the Moderna vaccine. It was a pleasure for me to go down to our clinic, have them unlock the door and allow me to see all 3,200 vials. I just wanted to see it in the flesh, and it is here, and we're happy about it. We are currently in phase 1A, and it's important for council to know that we intend to follow the outline provided by the CDC, the FDA, and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. It's a 4-phase approach. We're in phase 1A, which involves us providing vaccines to healthcare workers and members of long-term care facilities, to include staff and residents. And we are off to a good start. A little bit of information about long-term care facilities. There is a partnership between pharmacies of CVS and Walgreens, and they are set to commence vaccinating long-term care facilities on November the 28th. So we're certainly happy about that. The agreement that we have is those long-term care facilities that did not sign up for the pharmacy partnership will be the responsibilities of either Duke or the Department of Public Health, and we are certainly ready and able to vaccinate those individuals. As mentioned, the vaccine is not publicly available yet, and on yesterday, we thought it not robbery to be as transparent with our residents as possible. We did provide a press release letting them know that the vaccine indeed was here locally and that it was not available for public consumption. However, we will be sure to alert the general public at the appropriate time when it's ready for them to receive it. Again, pretty soon we are certainly hopeful to be able to provide community vaccinations at events such as housing sites, churches, and many more. We do know that there's a whole lot of work to do as it involves vaccinating well over 300,000 individuals who live in Durham proper. We are committed to sharing information. The Durham County Public Health website has been updated. We do have a new site, decopublichealth.org/COVID testing. And we also have we also have the website, decopublichealth.org/COVID-19 vaccines. We certainly want our population to receive the most accurate and up-to-date information, because we do realize that this is a personal decision, and you have to truly be armed with the right information in order to determine when you are ready to take the vaccine. There's a lot to be said about public sentiment about the vaccine, but in conversations I've had with my health director counterparts and conversations I've had with Katie Galbraith from Duke Regional, the real deal is people want this vaccine, and they're calling. They're calling every day to determine where they lie in the phase and how fast can they get the vaccine. We are encouraging people to look at local news, WRL, ABC 11, sign up for our listserv. The North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services has a dynamic website that is dedicated to COVID vaccines. And we do understand that we're going to have our messaging taken to the street. So we are certainly planning town hall meetings. We're certainly planning a lot of community conversations around the vaccine to dispel rumors and to acknowledge that from a racial equity perspective, we do know about the horrors of medical treatments and experimentation that has happened to people of color over the years, and to really let them know as far as the science behind the vaccine and what's gone into it, acknowledge that people of color showed up and showed out in huge numbers to participate in vaccine trials. If I may just talk about a few challenges and considerations. Again, I did mention dispelling rumors, transportation, getting people to and from vaccination sites, information, again, keeping people connected to info they're offline and not watching television is certainly a challenge. That second dose, you get your first primary dose, and then they have what we call a boost dose, which is the second dose. Pfizer is 21 days or 3 weeks. Moderna is 28 days or 4 weeks. And it's very important that you get your second dose to be vaccinated properly. And then, of course, the biggest challenge is going to be preparing for what we call phase 1B, which involves many, many people with 2 or more chronic conditions. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we have to take people at their word in the honor system. So there's really no verifying. We just have to just say, hey, you know, if you're saying that you have 2 or more chronic conditions, here's the vaccine. A lot of information in a very short period of time, Mr. Mayor and Council. More than happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Jenkins, thank you. Colleagues, as some of you all might know, I put out a couple of COVID thank you videos recently, and the first one led off with Mr. Jenkins. He has just been a fabulous, fabulous health director for Durham, a real COVID hero. He arrived here. 2 months later, we had a global pandemic. He had to get to know the staff. He had to get to know the community. And Rod, I want to say to you, I've said this many times, but I want to say again, you have been an absolutely wonderful colleague and partner and leader. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my incredible staff. You know, as I've said so many times before, I'm the front man for a rock star band, and that rock star band is my staff. And they rock out at every turn, and I'm just blessed to be amongst them. They're downstairs working tirelessly, providing vaccines, and we know that this is the last hurdle that we have to provide some normalcy. So again, thank you for the opportunity to shout out my staff, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jenkins. Colleagues, you've heard Mr. Jenkins' report, and what other questions or comments for Mr. Jenkins? Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Jenkins. Good to see you. I just wanted to say that while the numbers in the Latinx community are still disproportionately higher than the population, demographic population in Durham County, it is a huge improvement to what we saw over the summer. And I just want to really applaud department. Durham County was one of the first to implement demographic data. It was a huge push. We were one of the first, we implemented that. The department really listened to Latinx healthcare professionals and community folks, community advocates on what was really needed. And I just really want to applaud that listening and learning together, because it's made a huge, huge difference. I know the summer was quite terrifying. And while we're not in where we need to be, we're certainly in a much, much better place than we were in July. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and I certainly appreciate the partnership. I will acknowledge that you were one of the first councilwomen that I spoke to professionally when things were really getting bad. And I appreciate the push that I received, and I will acknowledge the push that I received from the Latin 19 Coalition. There were some truths revealed, and there are some things that we needed to do as an agency to better communicate with our Latinx population. And I'm so grateful to El Centro Hispano, La Ley, and all the many Latin 19 advocates that really pushed to ensure that that population was taken care of. And more information is coming out. We just recently did a Univision ad. We are continuing to really ensure that our messaging is in Spanish and it's tailored properly. And we know that we're still have a lot more work to do. But again, it was a pleasure to work with you all during the summer, and our work is not done yet.
Thank you very much. Other questions for Mr. Jenkins? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for presenting. I wanted to just note and echo your commentary and noting that, or your support or kind of cheering for Duke Health System and noting that they've been stepping up. And I want to appreciate that they've also, in addition to the Latin 19 group, they've actually set up the African American COVID-19 group, acknowledging that all the non-white overrepresentation has been very present. And so just making sure that to continue to focus on both Black and Latino overrepresentation is important. And then I also just wanted to just ask this full question just to make sure that I don't leave it on the table, because I know folks have mentioned it. And if you could speak to what's happening to folks in the allergies that have been acknowledged and to the actual vaccine, that would be helpful just to make sure that we do dispel the rumor or the myth.
Absolutely. And pleasure to talk with you, Councilman Freeman, and I thank you for championing not only African-American and other populations, but also children and parents. And I've heard you loud and clear as far as our K-12 activities and doing what we can to make sure that the voices of parents and children are heard as we prepare and do everything we can to get our babies back to school. To definitively answer your question, we have divided and conquered throughout the pandemic. I know I personally was involved with the Latin 19 coalition, and we had Marissa Mortarboy and a couple other people involved with the African American coalition in order to ensure that all populations were represented. To get to the second part of your inquiry, we acknowledge that those individuals who have a history of anaphylactic responses to different environments and allergens are going to be affected by this vaccine. There is a lipid protein within it that is been said to trigger it. And individuals who have that history have been encouraged or highly encouraged not to take the vaccine. More to come. We do acknowledge that there's still a whole lot more that we have to learn. There's still a lot of work to be done around children, and there's still a lot of work to be done around pregnant women. And I have the utmost confidence that, within the continuing trials, Councilman Freeman and other members, that we will get to a good place. But nevertheless, I'd also take the liberty of speaking on that new strain that's out there in the UK that individuals are very concerned about. We continue to follow the science and the data-driven decisions that are made, and the individuals from BioNTech and Pfizer and Moderna have expressed confidence that the science that's gone into their vaccines should protect us from the new strain. So we're encouraged by that as well. So I certainly hope I answered your inquiry.
Thank you, you did, and I appreciate that. And just noting, I just want to make just a pinpoint on Kimberly Monroe has been a phenomenal advocate for the people of color in this conversation from Duke Health Systems, and I do want to make sure I highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for being here and for all of your incredible work. I was really excited to see folks getting vaccinated over at the health department. So a little bit of hope in these difficult times. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about vaccine outreach, particularly in the Black community, as data is showing that there's understandably a lot more vaccine hesitancy among Black folks, and there's growing concern that this could lead to even bigger COVID racial disparities in the future if Black folks aren't willing to get vaccinated. Do y'all have plans for like ambassadors to go out into communities from local organizations to talk to people about the vaccine, or like people who, public health folks, but also, you know, just leaders in the community who, when they get their vaccines, of course, on the schedule that's appropriate, would be, you know, would be willing to do like public and, you know, public announcements, or like be, you know, kind of like a brand ambassador for the safety of the vaccine. Just wondering kind of what the thoughts are on that sort of outreach, or like social media stuff. Just a little bit more specifics about what y'all are putting together.
Absolutely. And great to see you again, Mayor Pro Tem. And as always, we appreciate your leadership. I will say the answer to that is yes. And the answer is also, it's already begun. It's begun with Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services, Ben Money, who's already done a number of PSAs. It's begun on the state level with them hiring a external communications team that their charge is to really reach out to historically marginalized populations. And it also began on the local level, maybe about a month and a half ago, with my weekly messaging to Durham, just basically letting them know about the vaccine and its efficacy and how important it is. And yes, community conversations have already begun. I was very grateful. Shout out to Alex Zakbayu, who's thought it not robbery to go ahead and start the conversations. And we hope early January to convene a more robust roundtable of stakeholders from historically marginalized populations in an effort to really begin to have those deep conversations in order to dispel those rumors. We certainly are going to take advantage of brand ambassadors, if you will, starting right here. I intend to get my vaccine really soon. It will be on camera. I'll make sure I put some lotion on my shoulders. My wife always tells me, make sure you get the lotion up, baby. But I plan to really do all I can to dispel those rumors. And I invite, by virtue of me being here, I invite anybody else who really wants to be a part of it. But plans are underway. So I certainly hope that answers your first question.
Thank you. I'm, you know, of course, y'all are on it. Just really glad to hear the efforts that are happening in the community. One thing that we've had some success with, and I know the county has, is health ambassadors that are hired from individual communities or from organizations that are trusted, who can go out and like really talk to people about their concerns. So I hope a program like that can be spun up. I think it would be really effective in getting building confidence.
Indeed. And in a presentation to Durham's Healthcare Preparedness Coalition on yesterday afternoon, I mentioned and shouted out the Back on the Build program and the community health ambassadors under the leadership of Kurt Ribso. And just really thankful to, again, the mayor and the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, Think It Not Robbery, to put that together. And it's been highly effective of getting into the really nook and crannies. But mainly it's been effective because the health ambassadors are from Durham. And there's automatic credibility when they walk into these businesses or they go to these community events to really promote health and safety when it comes to COVID. So we certainly are hopeful that that program will continue. And, you know, it's been doing some really great work, but we plan to use them as we can. And we're certainly hopeful that the Optum sites, the additional test surging company that we're using, may be flipped and be able to provide COVID vaccines to our community, because they have been at Durham Housing Authority for well over 2.5 months. They've built a reputation. Again, there's been some bumps in the road, I will acknowledge that, but at the same time, we continue to fight the good fight as far as providing that service to our community. So there's a lot of work to do, and I just invite all of you to assist us, because I'm always looking for public health champions to extend our reach.
Thank you so much. It's been a hard year. It's going to be another hard year. We appreciate so much all of y'all's work in keeping our community healthy and safe. And I'm happy to jump on whatever brand ambassador. I'm not going to get my vaccine. I'm at the very end of the line, which I said, you know, I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing, but I'm happy to jump in whenever I am eligible to get it, and to help in any way I can to make sure that we get it out there to our folks. So thank you.
We appreciate that. And we certainly know that the best is yet to come for 2021.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Jenkins? Councilmember Middleton and then Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jenkins, brother, it's good to see you, as always. Firstly, let me say I'm glad that your queen is on her game because ashiness ain't no joke and the struggle is real out here. So let's keep that lotion game tight. So those of you that understand, and others just help the others that don't understand. I want to say, firstly, I want to congratulate you on the job you've done. I just want to echo what my colleagues have said. Dr. King said that the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand during times of comfort and convenience, but rather during times of challenge and controversy. And you have stepped up during incredible times of challenge and controversy. Firstly, your leadership, your competence as a leader is unquestioned, full stop. You're competent. But to keep it real, the fact that you are in this position at this time, and I hear the buzz in the community, has gone a long way towards pushing back some of that historical hesitancy that exists in our community. And your presence and your hands on the helm, at the helm, has really helped put a lot of folk at ease in our community. So I'm going to congratulate you on just an incredible job you've done in your team as well, and pray that you will continue in strength and clarity of vision. My question is, well, maybe it's an invitation, an on-ramp for you to kind of dispel a myth or clear up something. There are some that are under the impression that there's a two-tiered supply chain for the vaccine, that Duke is getting a supply that's under its control, and that the county's getting a supply that's under its control. And there may be a more egalitarian approach for the county supply, but some think that Duke has got this supply that they can dispense as they see fit. And I want you to speak to, are the supplies being pooled? Is there one super highway sort of supply chain to Durham, or is Duke getting supply, the county getting supply? Talk about the coordination between the county, if you will, and Duke, and clear up or confirm or deny some of those concerns in the community, please.
Indeed. Councilman Middleton, thank you for your kind words. Certainly appreciate that. And I'll make sure I send you there, get your address and send you the check in the mail. I certainly appreciate that. But I will say this, there is no two-way street when it comes to this vaccine. Katie Galbraith and I, we talk almost twice a week, and she's a really busy person, and heaven knows I'm extremely busy as well, but we find the time to confer. The one thing I love about Durham is that it has a mighty and robust healthcare coalition, and we work together. We have been in different work groups with Lincoln, with Duke, with all kinds of different providers talking about this for quite some time. Duke has Pfizer primarily because they have a superior cold chain management, and they have the apparatus to keep that vaccine at extremely cold temperatures. I'm proud to say that through a partnership with Central, that we will have those freezer capabilities probably within the next week or so. So not only will we be able to have Pfizer, we'll have Moderna. It has been designated, Councilman Middleton and others, that local health departments are slated to receive Moderna because the handling ability is a lot more manageable. So again, that's the reason why there's a different kind. But make no mistake about it, we are encouraged or almost mandated by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services to work together. What does that mean? So glad you asked. That means that once it has been determined that we have been gone through 1A and all the healthcare providers are straight, then we have a duty to reach out to our hospital system to ask, who else is left? What else can we do? And then once it's been determined that we have scrubbed and we've exhausted all those resources or whatever, and we've gotten everybody, healthcare providers, frontline workers, and long-term care facilities, then we can move into 1B. But we're mandated to go back to our healthcare systems and talk to one another. So again, I say all that to say to everyone under the sound of my breath, if in fact you can get vaccine or you make the choice that you want vaccine, it is our charge to make sure that you get the vaccine. So again, whether you are able to get it from Duke or whether or not you come to 414 East Main Street, when the time is right, we're going to make sure that you get it.
Thank you so much for that. And just to put a fine point on it, because I want it to be clear to those that are in the community and those that are listening and watching today, the standard and the what's been promulgated is that all Americans, all people in this country will get it, whether you're insured or not insured. It's free.
It is free.
And the access will be in other when your group, your particular stratum of the demographic comes up and you're eligible to get the vaccine. Can you choose to go to Duke or to come to the Department of Health, or nobody's going to be checking insurance cards, or it's not a different quality vaccine? Will you be able to choose your location?
I'm telling you right now, eventually, Councilman Middleton, you will be able to go to a CVS, to a Walgreens, to your primary care physician. You may be able to go to a organized event from your church. I mean, eventually, we're going to get to that point. It's just that right now, with it being so new, we have to bring all the people into us. But make no mistake about it, I look forward to the day when we can take the show onto the road, because we want to make sure that we have that data person who can access the vaccine management system and that healthcare professional who can administer the shot. That is the way that we're going to be able to provide vaccine to the community in a fast and efficient manner. But to touch on that fine point, it's not going to matter whether or not you come to the health department or you go to Duke or you go to your primary care physician or you go to Walgreens, you're going to be able to get the vaccine.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's all I have. I really appreciate it. I've already had some initial conversations with folk, but let me just reiterate, when my number comes up, if you want me to roll up my sleeve in front of folk, I'll be more than happy to do that. There's about 6 people in the city, I think, that will be influenced by me. So again, thank you so much for your help, brother.
I got you and Mayor Pro Tem. I love it. I'm waiting on Councilwoman Freeman.
Colleagues, I'm going to give the last question to Councilmember Caballero. We're way over our time here. It's been an important discussion, but I do want to try to move this along. We've got a big agenda. Council member?
This is just a quick shout out to all the health ambassadors. So there's health ambassadors through El Centro Hispano and La Semilla that were funded through the state. Between them and the Back on the Bull folks, it has been a huge success. And just again, want to acknowledge the really hard, dedicated work that so many folks have done. And I will happily get a vaccine. I took a picture of myself when I got a flu shot this year and posted it. So whatever you need, I'm here.
Thank you, Council Member. I think we're all up for the vaccine when it's our turn, Mr. Jenkins, and we'll publicize it and hope it helps.
Yes,
thank you for being here with us.
I noting that I was called out. I want to make sure that I'm noted. And also noting Peach and Durham Tri are also offering those same community health workers as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make sure I'm in touch with Beverly.
Mr. Jenkins, thank you very much. We appreciate you for being here. Have a wonderful holiday if I don't see you before then. And we're going to move it on now to Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith, you're going to move us to the next part of this conversation.
Yes, sir. We will now hear briefly from Mark Sindak with Duke Pandemic Response Network for an update on Greenlight Durham. And as a reminder to Council, the Recovery and Renewal Task Force brought forward a recommendation that the city support a pilot program to provide symptom monitoring and testing support to employees in small businesses in Durham, based on numerous conversations we were having through our roundtable. So I'll turn it over now to Mark. Mark and Karina, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Ryan. Quick question. I just noticed, I think this is a version of the deck from before yesterday. I included more background. Is it possible for me to share my screen? Awesome. Do folks see this? Good. Okay, cool. So thank you everyone for the opportunity to present today. As Ryan mentioned, I'm here kind of wearing multiple hats. I have a day job at Duke that's with the Duke Institute for Health Innovation, where I've been helping lead and grow a health innovation team for the last 6 years. and during COVID have really been kind of jumped in March and working a second job in some ways on the COVID response and helping with the pandemic response network. So I'm here with a colleague, Karina. Karina, do you want to introduce yourself briefly and then we'll jump in?
Yes, hello. Sorry, I can't turn my video on. I think the permissions are off, but hi, my name is Karina Moreno-Bueno. I've had the privilege of being able to meet some of you, so I'm very thankful for that. I am currently a program coordinator for Greenlight Durham. It has been such a great experience in working with many people in the community. I'm also a student at Duke University. I am currently a senior. Oh, I am able to turn on my video now. Hello. Hi. So yeah, I've had the great pleasure of being able to work with everyone. I think this is a very important initiative considering that a lot of our marginalized communities in the area, which I also greatly identify with, coming from a family of Latinx immigrants from very nearby. So yeah, that's my spiel.
And I do want to kind of build off of the comments right before we jumped on about the community health workers. So we are working very closely with those entities, with Cure Americas, which is kind of serving as an intermediary between the state and the network of community-based organizations and faith-based organizations. So lots of partnerships in this work. So Greenlight emerged from a set of technologies, tools, best practices, and the work in the community that was done. We started doing this at Duke and quickly recognized that we needed to get this out into the community. We initially built tools to support Duke health workers and Duke students, offering services to the general public, but still identifying that we were facing these barriers to support, especially our historically marginalized communities. So then over the summer, we started meeting with all sorts of stakeholders in the community, small businesses, school leaders, faith-based organization leaders, and we were hearing kind of similar concerns from the community. There was a need for community safety monitoring, helping identify when there was a need for social or medical services, a way for people to get access to testing, especially if they didn't have insurance. So no out-of-pocket costs, concerns about needing government-issued identification, medical insurance. And then the third piece was that this was coming up in school and employment settings. If a setting did need to send people home to be remote or to be at home for some period of time, that could often mean that a paycheck wasn't going to be sent out or folks would not have the means to support themselves. So identifying what social services were available to connect folks to. But one of the things that we also noted was that these different settings were not well equipped to really support families and to support the community broadly. Schools really are funded for one piece of the population. Restaurants often don't have the resources or the financial stability to be able to offer the full set of benefits that a place like Duke or some of the larger employers may have. And many of the community-based organizations and faith-based organizations still had barriers accessing services. So over the summer, we kind of took a step back, had conversations with the County Commissioner, Wendy Jacobs, Mayor Schul, about, well, what are other ways that we can envision trying to take these support services and offering them more broadly to the community? Some of the activities that we've been up to the last few months, we've been working very closely with La Semilla, helped stand up that program over the summer, helping work with Duke to iron out the workflows for issuing COVID relief payments, social service reimbursements, started working with Student U in October. Now we're actually live at, I think it's 6 charter schools in Durham County, and then working very closely with our COVID-19 testing team and COVID hotline team to really streamline the process by which folks in the community can call to get scheduled for a test. Some of our activities also have specifically focused on designing this experience for historically marginalized communities. So one of our first major learnings in the Pandemic Response Network was that standing up a centralized program at Duke where Duke collects data, it's collected for research, there's Duke nurses, Duke volunteers reaching out to folks. There was a lot of enthusiasm for that program. To date, we have over 10,000 people who've used it, but 90% of them were white. There's a lot of individuals in the community who don't necessarily trust that type of centralized program. So we worked very closely with IDEO.org. They did dozens of interviews with community leaders, community members, and surfaced these 6 insights for really how to design an inclusive COVID-19 support system for historically marginalized communities. So I'll read them out loud because they do continue to drive a lot of our work. When communities constantly feel ignored or see resources flowing in another direction, they're primed to mistrust outsiders. For many, caring about COVID is a luxury in the face of more pressing and urgent needs. Contact tracing and symptom tracking asks the vulnerable to take on more risk than it's worth. Technology makes the public health response more efficient, but further alienates the most vulnerable. Trust comes easier between people with shared language, culture, and experiences. And lastly, holding the community's trust is a heavy load that response workers are not always prepared or equipped to bear. And unfortunately, these challenges continue to be the reality that we face 6 months later after doing the work. So we've made significant progress. I'm giving us a shout out. We were actually invited by the CDC. So myself, Alexandra Valladares from Durham, and Andrew Herrera were part of a panel at the CDC to specifically talk about how do you build trust in the community. So now honing in on what are we doing for small businesses. So there's many of these same challenges of confusion of the information of where to get tests, when is a specific industry going to be in line to get vaccines, what are the social service resources, what are the health resources. So in many ways trying to identify and surface those community resources. Obviously there still are gaps. There's places where there's not enough support or enough aid for businesses, but where there are resources, surfacing that and coordinating that for employers and employees of Durham small businesses. In addition, we're hoping to build out more robust playbooks and resource guides. That way folks in the community are aware and they have these playbooks to help guide them through the stressful decisions that they may face during the pandemic. So 3 kind of pillars that really focus the work. First is we want to make sure that at any point, someone who needs access to testing can get access to testing. I've spent a lot of time following up with different sites that do tests of what the out-of-pocket costs are if you don't have medical insurance. Something that we've heard within the last 1 to 2 weeks is that the turnaround time for asymptomatic testing has increased dramatically. So we're actually updating our recommendations, and in the next newsletter, hoping to have a table that shows what the different testing sites are in Durham, as well as what the turnaround times are for different types of tests. Number 2 is the safety monitoring, a daily check-in system that a business can implement and that they can use to help kind of understand the burden of illness and the burden of need within the employee community. And then third is making sure that once we identify a need, that the person who has that need is presented resources and services that are relevant to them. So I will kind of show folks a quick demo. This is what the system looks like today. Karina actually spends most of her time out there talking to businesses who are either currently using the app or new to the platform, trying to help folks onboard. So I get a daily text message that takes me to the website GLIT.me, and then I'll show you kind of what this looks like. So here, I'm kind of an odd user because I theoretically am using this for myself and for my daughter. Hypothetically, that I would use this for my employer and my daughter for her school. So I would complete a daily check-in, 3 basic questions. If I have any of these symptoms, which I do not. So you'll see first, I actually complete it for my 5-year-old Aria. So I do it for myself, for my child first, and then for myself. I submit this every day. We give folks a gift that's either pet or child related. And then once you complete this, you have kind of the timestamp and the status. And then we also have these other resources. So here notably is an urgent request form. This actually goes to the community health workers who are staffed in the community-based organizations. So one of the areas that we're excited to continue to grow the program is by onboarding more CBOs. That way we put these resources at the fingertips of employees and of families. Here you can also get the information for getting testing at Duke. One of the things I faced the first time I had to take my 5-year-old to get a test was also kind of trying to describe to her what the test looks like. So trying to link to other resources to help folks through these decisions and through these stressful moments. So quick updates and challenges. And then I want to also give Karina the chance to describe what it's been like to be out on the front lines. So we've onboarded staff who have started working full-time on the program. We have weekly newsletters, weekly office hours, and a lot of outreach. We've had to do a lot more in person than I think we initially expected, but there's also a lot of partnerships with the community health ambassadors and the Durham public health investigators whenever there's a cluster or outbreak at a restaurant. So we are participating in, we actually have the only 2 schools in Durham County that are participating in phase 1 of the Abbott Buy Next Now program are schools that we're working with. So there's going to be more that we'll start doing with public health reporting and public health integration, trying to onboard more community resources. Like I mentioned, the distribution channels. We obviously aren't trying to build a big team. We're trying to leverage many of the distribution channels that exist, many of the workforce teams that exist with the community health ambassadors, with the community health workers. We're also open to exploring other adjacent use cases. We're also working in schools already, but then working with homeless shelters and long-term health care. We have about 60 businesses that are already using the system. Some of the challenges that we've heard are that, first off, I included a few quotes. This is an incredibly challenging time for businesses, especially as the cold weather sets in. And I think a lot of folks were waiting for another relief bill for small businesses. People aren't sure who's going to survive as a small business through the winter. And I just want that to be out there. We're providing some support for businesses, but definitely sometimes it is, there's a different set of needs when we're out there talking to folks. We are recognizing that there's a set of users who put this in practice with daily check-ins, but then there's lots of other folks who just use Greenlight as a set of resources. They read the newsletters, they call us or email us. So there's a lot of business owners who I'm in regular contact with who aren't necessarily using the daily monitoring, but we just are an additional layer of support as they have questions. There clearly is a large need for this, everything to be in Spanish, and Karina has specifically been doing on-site trainings in Spanish for workers and for staff. And I think those are the main challenges I put here. Karina, do you want to just speak for like 30 seconds about what it's been like out there talking to folks?
Yeah, I've had a lot of the same sentiments that Mark has brought up, whereas like some folks are actually very grateful to just have like the resources right at hand. I think more specifically I do want to mention something, just considering that our aim is to help a lot, to provide resources to more marginalized populations. I've had a lot of one-on-one meetings and calls in Spanish. And the thing that I always get all of the time is, wow, this is really nice to have the government funding something where we actually have someone who can help us one-on-one, like very well in Spanish interlanguage, whereas in the past, it's been a lot harder. So I do want to highlight that, you know, there are folks out there that are very grateful to have people, they're very grateful for us like going in one-on-one, no matter what the language is. So that's about 30 seconds. I'm going to stop there.
Karina, what were you doing the last hour before this meeting?
Oh, I was on the phone with one of the users who's part of one of the organizations, and we were trying to troubleshoot everything over the phone in Spanish. And she just kept like repeating that she was very grateful that I was just there to help her one-on-one, more specifically in Spanish. So, and that honestly made my day. I every single day I get at least one of those calls. And honestly, if I just help one person like that, that makes my day.
So we definitely have recognized that there's a lot of closing the digital divide, and that's kind of Karina's job. And we are trying to scope out what the next phase of this looks like. We do think that clearly vaccines is going to be a big part of the next 6 months for Durham. To the comment earlier about bringing brand ambassadors, so already exploring opportunities with the community health workers to be doing group community discussions. And we have a physician on the Greenlight team already looking into kind of how to train individuals for vaccine consultations and discussions. like I mentioned, more public health reporting with vaccine and test results, building more robust community resources that are tailored to different types of users, whether it's a business owner or an employee. And I think more leveraging and partnering with the existing capabilities. So I'll stop there. I know that folks, it's secure, you can delete your data. It's a very different approach to data storage. Anyone can join this, it's live. We've got a great team who's full-time dedicated to Greenlight, as well as myself and a lot of folks, leaders at Duke, who are really helping remove barriers and make this happen as well. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Sendak. We really appreciate you being here. And can you take your slides down?
Yes, I'm trying to see how to stop sharing my screen. There. Perfect.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'll ask if there are any brief questions for Dr. Sendak or Karina. And we're way behind. We've got a whole big day today, and I want to try to get to things, items that can help our staff leave us. But if there are any questions quickly. All right. I want to express my thanks for both of you all for being here, and more particularly for the great work that you're doing. And I'm really glad that the city is participating in funding this effort. I know we all are. And I'm sorry we don't have time for a longer discussion today, but want to appreciate very much you being here. Mr. Smith, do you have any final remarks?
No, sir. Wish you all very happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for your great work, and we appreciate you both for being here. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I'm going to move on now. Before we, the clerk and I had been expecting Jessica Sheffield from the Eno River Association to be here for Citizens Matters. We didn't realize that she was here. So we're going to ask Ms. Sheffield, we want to welcome you. She's from the Eno River Association. She's going to speak to us very briefly.
Hi there all. I see that I'm in the direct sunlight. Let me see if I can shift that around. Yes, thank you for fitting me into the busy session. I'm Jessica Sheffield, Executive Director at the Eno River Association. And simply, this is the traditional time of year when the Eno River Association comes to Durham City leadership to say thank you for your partnership. This year in particular, thank you for helping get small businesses and nonprofits in Durham through the pandemic. This is also the traditional time of year for us to celebrate the success with you of our annual Eno River calendar. So just this morning, my daughter and I came by to deliver to you all 20 copies of the 2021 Eno River Association calendar. I left those at the front desk at City Hall for you. The theme of the 2021 calendar is reflections on the Eno. It's particularly moving after we've just spent this past year at the river so often, so many of us during the pandemic. So I hope that you'll enjoy the stories and the photos. And again, more folks than ever before have visited the Eno this past year. The pandemic has really highlighted for us the need for these wild and open and safe spaces. So if you haven't yourself visited recently, I hope that you will. I hope that you'll visit soon and often. I thank the mayor for his support during our Earth Day virtual event in April, for holding our hand when we had to cancel the festival for the Eno this July, and more recently, council members Reese and Freeline for your support at this month's annual meeting, which we had to do virtually, and you dropped in, and we really appreciate everybody on your team that helps. So again, thanks for all your support, and Eno River Association wishes all of you a very happy holiday.
Ms. Sheffield, thank you. We're sorry we can't see you in person, but we so appreciate you being here. Thank you for the annual gift of the calendar. And more than that, thank you for helping to make the Eno the absolute community treasure that it is. It is just one of the most wonderful aspects of our community, is to have that fabulous river and all that you all have built around it. So thank you so much. All right, colleagues, we're now going to move back into our regular agenda, and we're going to move to item 5, which is the first pulled item, and also an item that the manager would like us to take action on today. I did pull this also because I have a question, or shall I say, a concern I'd like to express. Ms. Young, good to see you. I am a little bit concerned that the term is set at when the end of the emergency order occurs. The reason being this. I could see the possibility of the emergency order going on in sort of specialized way for a really long time. At a time past when we might need to, or when our restaurants are really able to function more normally. I know that we're absolutely doing the right thing. Letting our restaurants not only use our streets, but also being in our public spaces like Black Wall Street Garden. But I do think that when we can, we want those public spaces to be for public use only. And so my suggestion would be, and I appreciate hearing your thoughts, that we have this extension of this temporary ordinance go to the end of the emergency order, or 6 months from, or say through June 30th, whichever comes first. If we want to, after June 30th, extend it again, I think that would be fine. But I am a little bit worried that saying the emergency order could lead us into a really long time of having this that we don't really necessarily want. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and members of council. Sarah Young. Mayor, I think that is perfectly fine and understandable and reasonable, and we can amend the order to that effect if that is how the council wishes to proceed with it.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Do you have anything else to offer us on this? That I know, of course, the item's quite clear, but is there anything else that you would like to say about it?
I just think that it's been a really, there was a bit of an experiment going on here when we first tried this, but we have gotten a lot of positive feedback from the community. I think we have one of our partners from DDI also on the call. They've received a lot of positive feedback from business owners and how this has really helped them. So I think it's been a good experiment for us to broaden our wings and allow this opportunity for folks.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Are there any other questions for Ms. Young or any comments? Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Young, for bringing this before us. Mr. Mayor, I totally support the suggestion that you made. And between now and whatever date we choose, be it June 30th or whatever, I'd like to request that staff come back with and explore the possibility of making this a more permanent change. We have a ton of unused off-street parking in downtown Durham. And it's hard to set up restaurant tables in a parking deck. But our staff has given the folks who work in downtown Durham, those businesses, a great set of instructions and opportunities to do that in spaces that are otherwise used to store cars. I think it's fantastic, and I'd love to look at the possibility of making this a longer term change. Obviously, there's some seasonality here that we want to try to respect in terms of when people will be willing to eat outdoors. But I think it's something we should look at. The other thing, while I'm on the subject, while my family has not participated in the streetery, and I know that there are reasons why we're not doing that right now, and those are good reasons. I think that has demonstrated to a ton of folks who work downtown that is a concept that can work during certain times of day and for certain periods of time. And I'd like for us to consider doing that at selected times throughout the course of the spring, summer, and fall to try to make more pedestrian use of our downtown spaces. So those are just two things I'd like to raise, but in terms of the actual agenda item, Mr. Mayor, I think you got some great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Any other questions or comments, colleagues? Council Member Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question about order, and it might be something that our city attorney's office may need to take a look at. About the declaration of the state of emergency, statutorily, a state of emergency can be declared by you unilaterally or an act of the council as well. And I'm wondering if at some point we need to just affirm your declaration of a state of emergency as a council, because insofar as where this ordinance is attached to the state of emergency, we're being asked as a council to essentially make law that's contingent upon the state of emergency that we as a council did not declare or affirm. And I'm just wondering, for legal tidiness and just for consistency, if at some point it might be helpful, and maybe it's not necessary, but the city attorney's office can certainly advise us, if as a council we should just, as a matter of form, affirm your state of emergency. Clearly it is a state of emergency, if we're going to be passing ordinances that are tied to that declaration.
You know, interestingly, council member, this is actually tied to the county's declaration of emergency, not to the city's. So what happens now is we work on the declaration of emergency. We work together on the emergency declarations. We haven't had to modify them much recently, except as the governor's modified his, and then we've included our orders under his. And then once we do that, the city adopts, we incorporate the county's emergency declaration. So this one is actually tied to the counties, but I'll ask the city attorney if she has any thoughts about the question that you raised.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I had to switch devices because my laptop kept dropping.
No worries.
That's why I was sideways. I do not have any thoughts off the top of my head. Mr. O'Toole has worked on this item and he may have some thoughts about that. I would think that if we had an ordinance in place, we could tie it to either a county state of emergency or a state, as well. So I'm not sure that it requires additional action from the council. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Councilmember Middleton.
No, absolutely. So I guess my question, and I understand we're going to tweak the language, if the ordinance if we were going to pursue to such a time as no longer a state of emergency due to COVID-19, what power would determine the end of the emergency? Would it be the governor? Would it be the mayor? For our purposes as a municipality, exercising our power, who blows the whistle to say that the state of emergency is over? I mean, in Durham, it was the mayor that declared it.
Well, and as I understand what the mayor is saying is we're tying it now to the Department of Public Health and their assessment of a state of emergency. And I know they closely watch the governor and the Department of Health and Human Services as well. So I would say that if we are in a position where the governor has rescinded or brought to a conclusion the state of emergency, then that would conclude this extension.
That makes sense. We probably need to codify that somewhere. We probably need to have some sense of when the state of emergency, when we will officially recognize our state of emergency as over, and what authority can declare that.
And we can certainly refine that language, council member, to make a specific reference to which state of emergency we are tying to, if that makes you more comfortable.
Sure. Yeah, that would be helpful, but I'll certainly defer to my colleagues as well. But I was just wondering about that. So thank you.
Thank you. Madam Attorney, as I interpret Councilmember Middleton's question, and Councilmember, help me with this, but I think what you're asking in a way is kind of a more general question than just about this ordinance. You're asking in the context of this ordinance, but who would declare an end of a state of emergency and who has the power to do that? And am I right?
Well, yeah, Mr. Mayor, insofar as this ordinance is specifically germane to Durham businesses and our streets, and the state of emergency is mentioned, and if we're going to be tethering this ordinance in any way that directly affects Durham activities, if we're tethering it to a state of emergency, I think it'd be helpful to determine when that who are we recognizing in that state of emergency, which will then trigger us to stop passing ordinances or tweaking ordinances that go directly to the functioning of Durham, because this ordinance is specifically about Durham folk.
Let me suggest that I'll work with the city attorney and that maybe something written, brief but written by the attorney shall we say, after the holidays, would be helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's nothing critical here, but just one thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Attorney. Okay, anything else, colleagues? Councilmember Freeman?
I just wanted to follow up. I appreciate Councilmember Middleton bringing to light. That was the second part of my question. The first part, though, I was just trying to figure out, Mr. Mayor, if you had some insight as you indicated the June 30th date.
I have no insight that that's a particular date. I think that it's highly probable that our restaurants will need this at least through June 30th. And so I chose that date for that reason. But that's not any particular inside knowledge that I have. It's my assessment of, I think, where we're going to be, given the vaccine and we'll probably need at least that much. This does provide for the fact that the council can, their language is, unless repealed earlier by the council. So we always have the ability to come back and repeal it earlier if we'd like.
And so I might just make the suggestion that we leave that date out, acknowledging that we could appeal it at any point, and otherwise we're going to have to keep bringing this back, acknowledging that it could be another 18 months of a state of emergency, so to speak.
I guess my preference is I'd like to see it back in 6 months. That given the fact that we have some of our public green space that people are using for private purposes, I'd like us to be able to make that judgment every 6 months or so. That's my preference, but that's of course up to the council. Any other comments or questions, colleagues? All right. I'll first ask, we need a motion to suspend the rules and vote on this item.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Freeland, that we suspend the rules and vote on this item. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Mayor,
Mayor Schul?
before we do that, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
What are we actually voting on here?
We're going to be voting to, you mean after that we suspend?
Yes.
Well, we have to have the motion.
Okay.
The motion.
All right, my bad. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the motion would be to approve the ordinance, but we haven't got we can either go with the ordinance language here or we can modify it. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to vote now on whether or not to suspend. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
Hang on a second. I think there might be another question. Councilmember Freeman?
Yes, just noting if the language is going to be changed, it might be better to bring it forward when the language is adjusted.
We've been asked to do this today because if we don't do it today, the restaurants have to shut down their operations. And I think we're in that emergency situation.
So would it be helpful to leave that language out and just move forward with what the language is proposed?
Again, that's up to the council. That's not my preference, but that may be the council majority preference. Let's decide to act on the item, and then we'll figure out which form by the majority of the council wants to act. Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeland?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. And we've now decided to suspend the rules and vote on this item. We now have an ordinance before us. We can either pass it in the form in which it exists, or we could amend it to make it invalid, become invalid upon the rescission of the county state of emergency declaration, or June 30th, whichever comes first, or we could pass it in the its present form, and I'll leave that up to any of my colleagues to make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I think before the motion, just acknowledging it's a little uncomfortable, acknowledging we're suspending the rules and voting in work session, and then we're also voting on unwritten language and I don't feel comfortable moving forward with the unwritten language, and that's the only that's the only objection I have. So other than that, I'm fine voting no and just moving forward with the unwritten language, or voting yes with the written language. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Reese.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to thank you for raising the concern that you did. I think what you say makes a lot of sense. And so I would move that we move forward with the item now that the rules have been suspended, to approve it today with the suggestion, with the amendment that you have outlined, which would be making the ordinance invalid upon the rescission of the county's declaration of emergency or June 30th, 2021, whichever comes first. Does that accurately reflect your understanding?
It does. Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Reese. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Any other discussion? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. Just a note that I really would love for this to be written out, and just to have a little bit more around that June 30th date, because I feel like this is just creating more work. But I completely agree with moving forward with having the locations available for our restaurants, and I think it's a really great idea, but I'll have to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Reese.
Mr. Mayor, just wanted to address that particular concern. I totally understand where you're coming from, Councilmember Freeman. The addition of the or statement only means that it's possible that the ordinance will become invalid sooner. The outer bound is one of the two. So it'll be either when we remove the declaration of, when the county removes the declaration of emergency, or June 30th. So it only adds that one particular provision. I understand you may have some transparency concerns about whether or not that's in the written form, but given the timeliness requirements that our staff have put before us, that this will, without action, this will expire at the end of this month before we have a chance to meet again. I think it makes sense to go ahead and move it, and I think the revision, the amendment that I've proposed, is reasonable and wouldn't be the subject of undue surprise to anyone who's making use of the ordinance. And so that's why I'm asking my colleagues to support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there any further comments? All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion on this in a second. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Mayor Schewel.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Nay.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The motion passes 6-1. Thank you, Ms. Young. All right, we'll now move to item 6, Amendment to Youth Initiatives Manager Interlocal Agreement. And I believe this item was pulled by Councilmember Freeman. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. And my specific question is just around how, the initiative was set up with goals in regards to demographics and how they're actually tracking that information.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor Schewel, City Council members, and the Durham community tuned in. I'm Laura Khalil with the City of Durham Office on Youth. It's been a while. It's good to see you. Thanks for that question. Could you clarify, are you specifically asking about the county's process or the Office on Youth's process that will be set up?
The Office on Youth's process and the interlocal agreement, just making sure that it's actually tied into it.
Yes, so for our Office on Youth process, it has not been outlined yet. We plan to form a youth adult board who will be comprised of community members who will steer the process and identify the priorities. You'll hear a little bit later about the work of our youth listening project. We're priority audiences for that project that will carry on into this work, and they will be outlined very clearly in the RFP when it's released. Those populations and identities and experiences are youth of color, youth who have experienced houselessness, youth who are not working and not in school, LGBTQ youth, immigrant and migrant youth, and youth who have had interactions with law enforcement. There might be other target audiences and identities that will be identified once the Youth Adult Board is formed and further defines the scope of the project.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice. Is that spelled out anywhere? The list that you just gave us?
It is spelled out in our update around the Youth Listening Project, but none of the RFP or the scope of our funding program has been outlined anywhere thus far. We're really waiting to have the community engaged as leaders in that process before we put that on paper. But that's our commitment, is to move forward the recommendations of the Youth Listening Project, which emerged from conversations with those audiences.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Are there other questions for Ms. Khalil? All right, Ms. Khalil, thank you. I know we're going to hear from you in a little bit, so we're glad to have you with us today.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, we're now going to move on to item 8, but before we do so, Councilmember Freelon has asked about the closed captioning folks, giving them a break at this meeting as well. Is this meeting being closed captioned, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, no, we don't use closed captioning with work sessions.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for that information. Thank you, Councilmember Freelon, for raising that. I had totally forgotten about it, and I appreciate it. All right, now we'll move to item 7. This is also an item that the manager has asked that we move on today. This is the contract with Open Table Ministry Incorporated for White Flag Cold Weather Emergency Shelter. I'm going to first ask, we'll need to suspend the rules and vote, but first ask if there are any questions or comments about this by members of the council. I see Mr. Johnson is with us. Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, I don't have any questions, but I do have just a appreciation for our homelessness team, for you, your department, for Colin Davis and the homelessness team for finding this solution, and especially to Open Table Ministries for stepping up to offer this service, and to Trinity United Methodist Church for offering their space for this critical need on cold nights. So I hope you'll pass on our appreciation.
Yeah, yes, sir, I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They've done an outstanding job in working through these challenging circumstances.
Really tough. Other colleagues, questions or comments? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for Mr. Johnson. Just acknowledging the conversation around demographics. Is there anywhere that information is being tracked or recorded?
So yes, Councilmember, thank you for that question. Now remember, this data is used in the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. Mm-hmm. So our goal is to have these funds reimbursed, which is why this is structured the way that it is. But that data is for the clients are recorded in Homeless Management Information System.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Council Member. All right, Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really just wanted to take a moment to echo your appreciation for the work around this item in Open Table Ministry. This item resonates really deeply with me. There is a perfect storm that has occurred during this pandemic, and that is organizations that are usually in position to help folk need help themselves. And they don't often make headlines or get a lot of attention, but oftentimes when there's a struggle or trouble, the first thing that goes is charitable giving. But the perfect storm is that during times of trouble, that's when requests to charitable organizations go up for help. So on the one end, you've got limited resources, usually limited, being even more limited, and more requests for help. And I just want to shout out members of the faith community in Durham, this rich, kind of deep, diverse community in Durham that oftentimes will go unheralded and step in during times of crisis with no headlines, no newspaper articles, whether it's food pantries or mentoring programs. And it's not proselytizing, it's not pushing the doctrine. It's just motivated by a simple ethic that when I was hungry, you fed me. When I had nothing to drink, that you gave me drink. When I was cold, you gave me a blanket. When I was homeless, you took me in. Not proselytizing, not getting you to sign anything, but just that simple ethic. Whether it's taking in the undocumented person fearful of ICE to live in the church, or homeless people, that many churches around our country house homeless people when there wasn't a pandemic all around, all year round. Open Table Ministry has been really, and I really got a great appreciation for them when I was shadowing you, Mr. Mayor, at HSAC rather. The work that they did, which really helped insulate our city from images of police officers clearing out encampments or uniformed law enforcement clearing out encampments. We had a really sustained, prolonged effort of humanitarian intervention that reflects our values, and the Open Table is really at the tip of the spear. And now, once again, when so many faith communities and churches and synagogues and mosques aren't meeting, don't have the volunteers to do what they normally do, have to maintain social distance, or we're in a lurch, but we're still burdened with that desire to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and shelter the homeless. Open Table is really stepping into this time and doing it under the most dire of circumstances. So I just want to thank them and just really double down on your appreciation, Mr. Mayor, and just really to celebrate what makes Durham so great. Faith, no faith, whatever your tradition, we take care of each other and we step in when it's dark and we shine light. So I look forward to voting for this contract, and I just want to thank everybody that's working so hard to make Durham Durham. These are troublesome times, but it's a beautiful thing to behold who we are when it most counts to be who we are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. All right, colleagues, are we ready to vote to suspend the rules and vote on this item? Can I have a motion to that effect?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Caballero, seconded by Councilmember Freeland, that we suspend the rules and vote. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schewel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeland?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The motion passes unanimously. Now could we have a motion to approve, to adopt, I'm sorry, let me get the language right here, to authorize the expenditure and authorize the execution of the contract?
Move to authorize.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Freeland. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schewel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeland?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank
And
you.
Please pass on our appreciation to the church, to Open Table Ministries, and to your staff.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Happy holidays.
You too. Colleagues, we're now at item 8, and I pulled this item. This is TIP number C5605E, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program Bike Lane Supplemental Municipal Agreement. Good afternoon, Mr. Judge.
Hello.
Mr. Judge, are any of these bike lanes separated bike lanes?
Yes. So Bill Judge Transportation. So yeah, for this first project, number 8, there are a number of protected bike lanes with buffers, depending on the cost or the bid quantities, whether or not it's yet to be determined whether or not there'll be vertical bollard separations, but there definitely will be buffered bike lanes.
Fantastic. Thank you. My next question is, I'm a little confused about the funding situation. Has the state funding for these projects now been unfrozen? Were these among the projects that were frozen and now is unfrozen? Is that what's happened?
Yes, exactly. These were part of the locally administered projects that were frozen. These 3 projects, 8, 9, and 10, are 3 projects that are most ready for construction. Basically 100% designs complete. There's no right-of-way required. So we asked for these to be advanced first as as the state was able to begin advancing projects.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. Those were my questions, Mr. Judge. Are there any other, Councilmember Caballero?
Yeah, so all of mine, I pulled this item and the next two, and they're all related. So I just would like to ask my question now.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Were the associated increase in costs for all three of those projects, was it all because of the delay through NCDOT?
I would not say it's 100%. Certainly the delay by DOT likely did cause some inflation. All three of these projects, basically, now that they've been unfrozen, we had updated cost estimates prepared and sent to NCDOT, and we're able to get the additional funding. So it's possible that some of them might have had some cost increases before the cost estimates had not been updated prior to DOT freezing the project. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
I think you want that money back from DOT, don't you, Councilmember?
Yeah, I added it up. I didn't want to take too much time. You know, the three combined, it's $609,668. And I imagine that our Department of Transportation probably could have used that money. And so I was rather annoyed reading these agenda items. I know this is getting raised a lot in the MPO and don't want to belabor the point because we're already pretty long in our meeting. So I'll leave it alone.
Point taken, however. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Judge? Mr. Judge, thank you for being with us. And Councilmember Caballero, let me just check in. Were there any other questions on items 10 or 11?
That was it.
Okay, or 9 and 10. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Judge, have a wonderful holiday. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we're now going to move to item 12, City of Durham Employment and Training 2020-22 Grant Project Ordinance, Superseding Ordinance 15708. And I believe Councilmember Freeman pulled this item, but I'm not quite sure. Is that correct?
Yes, you are correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I honestly, I pulled the item just to note that this was a partnership with Durham Tech, and it's an area that could help in our conversation of health and wellness. Or health and safety, acknowledging that there are lots of students who have clear career paths because of this type of agreement. And then just to note that the amount that I think the city is locked into is $75,000 is quite low. And I would love to figure out how we increase our support to make sure that we have more resources aligned with kind of making sure that there are students connected to kind of career paths. And so just hoping that staff will be bringing forward some suggestions and just making sure to take a moment to say thank you for bringing this one.
Thank you, Council Member. I see Mr. Nixon is here with us. And Mr. Nixon, I want to echo Council Member's appreciation. And you heard her comments, and I'm sure that she is also a member of the Workforce Development Board, and I'm sure that she's bringing those same concerns to you there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Nixon, have a great holiday. Thank you.
You too.
All right, colleagues, we're now up to item 13. This is the Durham City County Interlocal Agreement for continuation of the gang reduction strategy. And who pulled this item? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Councilmember Freeman? Great.
Yes, I just really wanted to get a better understanding. I wanted to know the connection between, I guess, the work that's happening with the other task force that are in place and this one, because I'm a little confused. Just noting, I had notes and I have to make sure, but I know the Project Build and there's a second one that comes to mind are aligned with this work. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about how all of those task force or how those initiatives are aligning to do the work to make sure that we are alleviating our gang violence situation, because we've seen a rise in the last 6 months or so.
Thank you, Council Member. Let's see, who from the staff is here to respond to that?
Mayor Schull, this is Kevin Cates with the Police Department.
Chief Cates, good to see you. Were you able to hear Councilmember Freeman's question?
Yes, I was. We've been involved with our side of this is the Project Build. They took it over and we've just been providing funding, and we also meet with them on a monthly basis when they do their case studies. since, I guess, 2014 or 16 is when we started that. The other side of this is the violence interrupters. They all fall under the Gang Intervention and Violent Crime Prevention Program Manager with the county. So they work side by side, but I don't know how much interaction they actually have. There may be somebody here from the county who can answer that.
I don't, I see Mr. Oh, good. Mr. Steit's here. Mr. Steit, welcome. Thank you to Mr. Cates or to Chief Cates. Mr. Steit, could you introduce yourself, and also you may have some comments to offer.
So yes, I could. Thank you, Mayor, and greetings to council members and everybody else. Jim Steit, Gang Reduction Strategy Manager. I'm a county employee with the Criminal Justice Resource Center here in Durham. So Durham has a comprehensive gang strategy that's been in place since about 2009. We adopted a model that's put forth by the National Gang Center, and we've been operating in that model for the past 10 or 11 years. We have a steering committee made up of actually a couple people that are on in this meeting here. Wanda Page is the co-chair. Mayor Schul's on that steering committee as well. And we oversee the work in prevention, intervention, and suppression efforts, the overall work. Now, Project Build is an intervention team that's partially funded by this interlocal agreement that you have in front of you. Project Build serves about 50 clients a year. Kids ages probably like 13 to 18 are the most common. And they get referrals from court counselors, from the community, from the schools, parents, and others. And they work with these youth that are already involved in gangs or really at severe risk of being in a gang. And they just provide services for the youth, whatever they might need, whether it's substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment. They do a lot of assistance in schools. And they've got a really good track record as far as their clients exiting the program, accomplishing what they need to accomplish, which might be something simple like getting off probation. It could be graduation. It could be a number of things, but the program is very successful and it's working out great. So I would be happy to answer any other questions about the overall strategy or how the steering committee works, or about the gang assessment, which is upcoming, and it's also part of this funding package in our interlocal agreement this year.
Thank you. I appreciate it. In the interest of time, I just wanted to note that the way that this, I guess the financial impact is written, it's almost as if there is a person who is being paid $157,357 to do this gang reduction strategy management. And that kind of threw me off because I think 50,000 is going to Project Build. And that seems like that's not a good use of the funds. And so it would be great to get an overview or a report or anything of the sort, because I have no information coming out of this other than this interlocal agreement that shows that there's 157,000 going to a gang reduction strategy manager and 50,000 to Project Build, which seems it should be reversed.
All right, I understand your concern. So the interlocal agreement funds my salary. I'm the gang reduction strategy manager. And I should note that the costs of this overall strategy are shared 50-50 with the county. So the interlocal agreement also funds various segments and employees of Project Build. And in this interlocal agreement, this fiscal year only, it's funding for a comprehensive assessment that we're planning to do. So I think if you look at the way the money is spent, it's well distributed between the city and the county. A good source for additional information, if you just Google Durham gang reduction, it'll pull up our gang reduction website. There's information there on the steering committee. We collect a lot of data because we want to know whether we're making an impact on the gang issue or not. So there's various reports, and there's a lot of good data on that website as well.
And thank you, I appreciate that. And you're saying that there is a report already that you already provide through this website? I'm on it now.
Well, there's several reports on that website. The most recent one is, I believe it's entitled Gang Crime in Durham for the year of 2019. but the past assessment that we did in 2014 is on that website as well. And I think you can probably find the original assessment done by some researchers back in 2007, which was kind of the driver of the entire program that we've got going right now.
Okay, so from 2017 to now, there's been no assessment and no reports done, is what you're saying?
It's actually 2014 since the assessment. So the assessment's on like a 7-year cycle, 2007, 2014, and now again in 2021. In the meantime, we've probably got at least a dozen reports on that website. It's a separate page. Reports on gun crime, reports on gang crime, reports on a wide variety of things that should be of interest to the community and that are Durham specific.
So I'm just, so for the last 3 years that this interlocal agreement's been in place, I'm assuming there was a different amount based on what you're saying, because there's been no, like, I'm looking at the separate page in the site from 2017 forward. I don't see any reports or any information relating to a strategy that's been implemented, or so I'm assuming everything's just been remained the same since 2017. And I'm trying to understand, because I know that there's multiple groups that are working on this. And I just want to know the wheelhouse that you're in.
Right. This interlocal agreement's been in place now for probably 10 years. I've been here, I think, 9 years. So it's been automatically approved by the city and the county. This time we wanted to bring it before you because we have an additional cost just for this year, which is to help fund this comprehensive gang assessment that we'll be working on. But just a little bit of correction, we do have several reports that are very recent, and there's information on that website as well about the activities of the steering committee going all the way back to when it was formed in 2009. So you can see pretty much a summary of every meeting that we've had, some of the results, and other information on there.
I'm not going to belabor it, but I appreciate you sharing the site, and I would like to get, I guess, some type of briefing that would discuss more about what it is that's been going on since 2009 to now, acknowledging that there's been a huge increase in gang violence right now.
Right. I would be happy to provide that report. I'll get a few more details, perhaps from the mayor who's on the steering committee, and we'll have a report for you.
Madam Manager, do you have some comments?
I did just want to make one brief comment, and it relates to just the item that is before you today. That particular interlocal agreement does have $102,575 that is allocated toward the project bill funding, and $54,782 to the gang reduction strategy manager funding. So just wanted to make sure that those numbers were corrected. That allocation is more toward project bill than the gang reduction strategy manager component.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Just a follow-up question. I'm sorry. Are you saying that on page 2 it's not correct on the memo? I just wanted clarification. That was all.
Page 2 of the memo doesn't break it down like that. If you read page 2 of the memo, it says the $157,000, and then it lists the 3 things that it's for. And I'm going to suggest to Mr. Stipe that you provide us a breakdown of those funds that you may have already provided the manager, but that when we get this on Monday night, 10 days from now, 12 days from now, that we have the breakdown of that on a chart as part of this item.
I think that would be a good idea. It's really hard to ferret it out from reading the interlocal agreement. So maybe just a pie chart or something like that showing where the funds are actually going to would be helpful in this instance.
Yes, that's why I brought it up. The memo does not detail it, but the actual interlocal agreement has it detailed out, and we can make some amendments to the memo to make sure that it's clearer.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Specifically around what city is covering and county's covering. Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you, Council Member. Thank you, Mr. Stight. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Chief Cates, thank you for being here with us. Mr. Stight, thank you for being here with us, and we hope you all both have a wonderful holiday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor, and happy holidays to everyone.
We miss you, Chief Cates. We miss seeing you in person, but we're glad you're here with us today.
Just know I'm here every day for you, sir.
I know you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we'll now move to item 16. This is an item that I pulled, contract WS 85 sewer extension of Garrett and Mimosa on Garrett and Mimosa. Ms. Johnson, nice to see you.
Good afternoon. Good to see you, sir.
Ms. Johnson, for the sewer extension on Garrett Road initiated by Merle White, I understand that we're obligated to do this, but what I don't understand is what the policy is that obligates us to do this. Can you let us know what that policy is, and is it a good policy? Is it something that we want to continue?
So the policy is actually covered in section 70-99 City Code, and I'm sorry, Tasha Johnson, Public Works Assistant Director, is covered in section 70-99 of the City Code that explains what the city's obligation is. Whether or not it's good, I don't know that I would offer a comment on that, but it is an obligation that the city has to extend the sewer and provide this service.
So, Ms. Johnson, I guess I understand. So we've got two sewer extensions in this item. One of them clearly needs to happen. That's the emergency. The county had determined, I've read this a couple days ago, so I'm not quite got this exactly right, but the county had determined that there was the water on one of the pieces of property wasn't good and we need to extend. This one I didn't quite understand what our obligation is and why we're doing this. And so I see Mr. Joyner. Mr. Joyner, do you have something to add to that can help enlighten us?
Morning, Mr. Mayor. Robert Joyner, Public Works Engineering. So essentially this section of the ordinance dates back quite a ways. It's something that is not used very often. I believe this is the first case since the late 80s that is allowed. But essentially in these types of sections, there's a section of the ordinance that allows someone who makes a payment to the city to extend utilities and road systems as a function of the ordinance.
I guess I'm trying to determine, and we can talk about this another time. I'm going to vote for this, but I'm trying to figure out, I've been really troubled by, and we've made some good changes, I think, recently, and some of the let's just say low bars people have to jump over to get city funds to help them out when it's for, a private use. And so wondering, is this one of those or not? And I see Mr. Ferguson's here too, and he may have some comments. So
yeah, so this is something like that. This ordinance will be removed in the near future. Again, it's not something that's used very often. It dates back to the time where the city actually built streets for folks, which we had a large workforce. It predates back before ordinances were done by the state level, which prohibit municipalities from sort of engaging in private competition with for-profit companies. So this section of the ordinance is extremely old. And because it's not used very often, simply because it takes so long to actually come to fruition. Most people simply don't want to wait, and they pay, generally speaking, a lot of money. This particular one is a little out of whack because of the time frame and the changes of costs.
Yeah. Mr. Ferguson, did you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Bo Ferguson, Deputy City Manager for Operations. So I just wanted to remind council that you've given direction to us to come back before you in January to come back with some options around the petition process. And that came from actions that you took in October regarding some recent petitions. During that time, I think we would be happy to engage a broader discussion about some of these tools. As we have learned in that process, a number of these types of opportunities for residents to have infrastructure built are kind of hidden in the code and date from times when the city's policies may have been driven by different values, may have been driven by different realities and circumstances. I know we've talked a lot about involuntary annexations and how when the city was very active in that there were a number of policies written around that to help develop infrastructure in areas that were being brought into the city. Those circumstances may not exist anymore. So I think you will hear some of that described when we come back to you in January. And at that time, if you are interested in us conducting a little bit of additional research around other tools like this that follow values and policies that you direct us to pursue, I think that would be an appropriate time. We could launch into a further investigation of some of those things.
That sounds perfect. That's great, and I appreciate the context that you all have offered. Thank you so much. I do think that I'm glad you're looking into that, and I do think this is it's problematic, and I appreciate your bringing it to us. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Joyner, and Ms. Johnson. Thank you so much. Colleagues, any other questions or comments on this item? Okay.
Just one comment of thanks, Mr. Mayor, for pointing that out. I acknowledge that there have been lots of different time frames where ordinances like this surface or they come up and you notice the inequity in it. And I just wanted to make sure that I put a pin in acknowledging how this reflects on that previous case that we looked at for those folks trying to get a fire hydrant on their street. In context, it just seems unfair. And so just trying to figure out what the next step looks like. So thank you.
Thank you. And it sounds like our staff is going to help us with some guidance. Ms. Johnson, thank you. Mr. Joyner and Mr. Ferguson, we appreciate you and we wish you wonderful holidays ahead. All right, now we have two presentations now, item 20 and item 21. And the first item, item 20, is the City of Durham Office on Youth 2020 update. And I'll welcome, I'm sure Ms. Khalil is still here with us.
Sorry about that. Hang on one second.
Take your time.
Okay, there we go. I've got two monitors trying to work this thing out because I'll be sharing my screen. Good afternoon again. I'm joined
Ms. Khalil, just for one moment. I want to ask Madam Mayor Pro Tem, would you preside over this presentation?
Yeah, sure. Happy to.
All right, you're on.
Which one of us?
You're on, Ms. Khalil.
I don't think I have to actually do anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Go
right
ahead. So, good afternoon again, Council. I'm joined by my amazing team. We have a presentation for you today, an update of our activities. I'm going to actually kick it to Jalen Seekers, who's going to get us started. And let me share my screen. See if this will work. Does it work? Great.
Yes, it works. All right. Good afternoon, Mayor Schul, City Council members, and the Durham community tuned in, and a warm welcome to Council Member Freeland. My name is Jalen Seegers, and I am a project assistant in the Office on Youth. I am also a sophomore at North Carolina Central University, and I have the pleasure in opening our session today. I'm joined by my colleagues in the Office on Youth, Norm McDuffie, Elise Fraser, and Laura Khalil. We are grateful to all be here with you this afternoon to share an update about the work we do in the Office on Youth. Since it's been a while and that we've been able to share an update, and Council Member Freeland is new in his role, we'd like to start with a brief background about the City County Strategic Youth Initiative and how it relates to the work we do in our office. Then we'll ground our discussion in the values and the vision of our office, which emerged from our strategic planning process earlier this year and last, and we'll shine on who we are and what we believe in. Then we'll share the work we've been doing and the work we have planned ahead. Now I'll turn it over to Laura Khalil to talk about the City County Strategic Youth Initiative.
Thank you, Jalen. So I'm delighted that you get to meet the whole team. You'll see, they are incredible. So a little about the City County Strategic Youth Origins. Many of you know this initiative follows in a long legacy of efforts in Durham to reduce barriers to youth success. And in 2017, the city and county made a commitment to build on these efforts and entered into an interlocal agreement. That agreement established a position, a city-county position, that would lead this new initiative. I have had the great honor of serving in that position for 3 years as of this past Friday. The position was housed in the Office on Youth, which is in the city manager's office, and the direction from the county is provided by General Manager Miss Deborah Craig Ray. There's a long list of responsibilities for the position in the interlocal agreement. The scope is very broad. It focuses on city and county youth services for all young people ages 5 to 24. And the Office on Youth offered some much needed infrastructure to do this work. And the programming in the Office on Youth fit very well with the goals of this initiative. So over time, after talking with hundreds of stakeholders and following the strategic planning process that Jalen mentioned, the goals of this initiative were really clarified and also became the goals of the Office on Youth. So this is an old visual here. It's fun when you can play with the animations. Not as exciting when everyone already has the slides in advance. Some of you have seen this slide before, not going to spend a lot of time on it. On the left, you'll see some of the challenges identified as part of past city-county supported youth initiatives and challenges that still persist today. In the middle, there's a sampling, just a sampling of all the responsibilities highlighted in the interlocal agreement, and it's sort of color-coded to show how they map to the challenges. And finally, you can see how the challenges and the manager responsibilities translate to the overall goals of our office, which are to increase opportunities for equitable youth engagement in local government. And by engagement, we mean full participants, decision makers, leaders, and sharing powers with adults. We also want to help strengthen the impact of youth services so that services are effective and are also actually meeting the needs of young people in Durham. And we want to keep strengthening the infrastructure to do this work in the office because we are a very small and mighty team. You actually are meeting the entire office today. So I'll hand it over to Nori.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nori McDuffie. And before we share about the work we've been doing, I wanted to ground us in our values. As a part of our strategic planning process, we all got together and developed a shared vision and our values for the office. We knew it was important to have these things before we settled on an approach. And you can see on this slide, it lists some of our key beliefs and driving principles for our office. We believe that the only way to achieve equitable results for all young people would be to demolish the presence of all isms. We believe it's vital to amplify and center the voices that have been silenced and underrepresented. Next, I think it's important to remember that young people are people and not tokens. That not only should we be invited to the table, but our voices should be heard and our guidance should be called upon. Know that we are leaders of the now and the future. We should be active decision makers in the policies and programs that impact us. And finally, we know it'll take a collaborative effort with shared priorities and collective action to achieve our goals. The vision of the Office on Youth is all young people in Durham are their whole healthiest selves and have the power and platforms to lead positive community change. We work towards this vision in two main ways that Laura touched on: creating opportunities for young people to be decision makers in local government, and working toward improving city and county youth services for all children and youth ages 5 through 24 years old. We work with a lot of different partners to do our work, including young people and their families, decision makers in local government, and service providers. Now, Elise will move us into our progress update for our first goal around youth engagement.
Hey folks, so moving on into our first goal is to create new opportunities for young people ages 13 to 24 to fully participate in local government planning and decision making. So I really like to think about this goal as having two main audiences. So one is young people and then the other is adults, right? So the first part is about preparing adults to work with young people. So how do we share power with young people? How do we shift our structures and build new structures, right? And then the second part is about supporting young people and working within adult structures. So like what skill building and knowledge do they need to make informed decisions in order to be successful? And so what does that work look like in action, right? For the last 3 years, we've been building our youth service provider network. We manage and support a network of now over 225 young youth service providers in Durham. And so that network includes folks from like city and county departments, but also our community partners, which are really important. During this time of physical distancing, most of that work has been done during our Yo Durham listserv, where service providers can share resources and opportunities with each other that support young people. And this is, again, young people under the age of 25. So the listserv has been especially important resource during the pandemic and keeping us all connected and sharing resources with each other. We've also hosted a number of in-person gatherings prior to COVID. We had a few virtual ones in the last 10 months, but a lot of these have included youth engagement trainings, networking events, and then also just general events around connecting to and understanding the current needs of young people in Durham. So much of our work has been guided by what service providers said they needed and wanted from each other in order to build upon youth leadership within their organizations and then within our city. So moving forward, you'll hear from the team a lot about our youth listening projects, and we hope to convene more spaces where service providers can gather around the youth listening project priorities. People have been really excited about them so far. Actually, last week we hosted a sneak peek for some of the service providers where we shared our findings, and we kind of just started the conversation and really just readying the ground for when our findings and the final report comes out. Some of the other portion of our work, right, has been really about how do we support a number of city county departments in the creation of new decision-making positions for young people. So we've been advising departments on the best ways to recruit and select young people, and then also on how to create like youth welcoming spaces within departments and within their initiatives. We also help to recruit young people for new positions and to support them in their roles and make sure that they, again, can be successful. And then here you can see just a list of some of the opportunities across the departments, plus a few community organizations that we've worked with to do this work. We've been able to support and connect about 20 young people in different city county positions, almost all of them being young people of color. And then finally, next, based off what we heard and seen as needs, our consulting role with other departments will definitely expand next year. This is a result of the Youth Listening Project and being able to help us figure out and prioritize. And then finally, within our youth engagement goal, we have the Durham Youth Commission. The group is 15 high school age young people. About a year and a half ago, we made a drastic shift away from service learning and volunteerism to more focus on youth advocacy. For the last term, we not only shifted our focus, but we also shifted our recruitment strategy. We wanted to see more of Durham's young people represented on the commission. So in my first term in the DYC, there was only one Latinx member, and there were also all of our members on the DYC were really high performing young people in traditional education systems. And so part of our change, we did see a shift in our membership The last cohort of the DYC was 1/3 Black, 1/3 Latinx, and then 1/3 white. And that included young people from rural Durham, but also young people who identified as LGBTQ+. And then we also saw, when we talk about like high achieving young people, we also saw a broader representation of leadership styles from our young people. Prior to COVID, the DYC got to connect with you all and some of the county elected officials a couple of times and discuss the vision of youth engagement in local government. Their last convening involved the escape room, which some of you are pictured in here. They started to plan an advocacy project for the year, but because of COVID, we didn't get to complete that. And then because of the demands of virtual learning and Zoom fatigue, we definitely saw a decrease in engagement. So we've shifted more to be a supportive role for our young people who needed extra assistance. So we've been meeting with them regularly to check in and make sure they have what they need and to support them however we can in achieving those things if they don't. So the last kind of thing or the next step here, the results of our listening project have prompted us to again reassess the DYC structure and just really figure out what's the best role for organized youth group in our office. So we anticipate their role will continue to evolve as our new priorities evolve, right? But we hope to begin recruiting the new cohort in the spring, and then we'll officially welcome them in July. And then I'm going to pass it off to Jalen.
Thank you, Elise. So the next set of updates connects to our second goal in the office, which is about strengthening the impact of city and county youth services. Much of our work to date for this goal has been in a listening and discovery phase versus implementing solutions, although we've done some of that as well. We recognize that there was a lot of work to be done to first understand what youth and families need, and second, to understand the current landscape of offerings before creating any solutions or strategies. So to that end, one of our most significant projects over the last 18 months has been the Youth Listening Project. The goals of the project were to understand how to better engage and communicate with youth and their families, to understand the barriers of participating in youth services, and find priorities that could guide our work in the office and also the work for our partners. We also knew the process of doing this work was just as important as the outcome, and our goal was to use a collaborative, equitable process to build trust with new partners in our community. We created multiple youth leadership positions during this process, from being on the selection team that helped select the consultant we use, to hiring 3 part-time youth staff in the Office on Youth, including me and Nori, who served on the Youth Adult Board, and also adding 5 youth ambassadors. This team of young people made decisions about project design, facilitating listening sessions, or a part of data analysis, and co-wrote the recommendations for this report. We also knew we couldn't talk to all young people, and we had to make decisions about who we wanted to prioritize during this process. And after much deliberation, you can see the identities and experiences we centered in the project here, and they are youth of color, LGBTQ+ youth, immigrant and migrant youth, youth who are not in school and not working, youth who have experienced economic hardships, houselessness, and interactions with law enforcement. We did our best to reduce the barriers for participation through things like childcare, interpretation, Spanish-only sessions, meals, gift cards, transportation, and we also had self-care stations and a support person at every session in case something came up hard for someone during these conversations. We also work with many community partners who have established trust with young people with these identities and held private sessions where we went to where they were. We also had sessions open to the public, and we hosted them in partner locations all across Durham. Now I'll pass it over to Nori to talk some more about the Youth Listening Project.
So where are we now with the project? We kicked off in late summer 2019 by hiring a consultant rooted in Durham and willing to challenge us to radically change how we do engagement, strategies for freedom. We knew there were lots of issues that young people wanted to talk about. So to help us narrow those down a bit, we went to community events and asked young people what made Durham a great place for them and what can make Durham a better place. We collected over 600 responses. Those responses help us find our focus areas for the project. You can see those listed areas here. As a testament to our amazing team, we hosted 13 listening sessions in about 7 weeks between January and March. And unfortunately, 6 other sessions were canceled because of COVID. We decided it was important to move forward with what we had gathered thus far, and we moved into our data analysis or sentence making phase. From there, we wrote a report with 30 draft recommendations. The final really important piece before we could start sharing widely was going back to the community and affirming that we got the recommendations right. We held 3 virtual sessions where we asked youth and caregivers for feedback on the recommendations. From there, we went back to the report and made edits based on what we heard. In total, we had over 200 in-depth touch points between the listening session and the reflecting back sessions. The final 20-page report, plus some short summaries, are being finalized and translated now and are expected to be released in the next year. We hope to share our findings with you at a joint city-county meeting early next year, as well as broadly with other many partners. So in terms of next steps, we don't want this to be a report that collects dust on a shelf. Within our office, we've already begun a series of retreats to scope out our new priorities. We've also done consulting and advising to comprehensive and transit plans that are being updated. We know the next few months will involve lots of presenting while we're on our road tour, sharing the findings broadly in a number of hopefully engaging formats with many different stakeholders and partners, including those in our youth engagement network. We plan to support convenings and advocacy work around the recommendations that emerge as collective priorities among these partners. And finally, we've been able to secure some additional funds from Durham County's nonprofit funding program to launch our own grant program next year that will help advance the listening project priorities. And now I will pass it off to Laura.
Thank you, Nori. So you heard a little bit about this earlier, and I'll just say a few more words about the grant funding program before we move on. We're really excited about this. This is a concrete way to move forward the recommendations and listening project in partnership with community organizations and groups. Much of the specific scope and the size of the awards, et cetera, will be shaped by a youth adult board that will guide the process. We had a lot of success with a youth adult board with our listening project. And so we have experience and some lessons learned from doing that will apply to this process. And we also know there's other funding processes happening, our participatory budgeting, cycle 2, our county's process, then neighborhood improvement services funding that's happening for community organizations. So we'll work closely with all of those different pieces as we refine the scope and make sure we're keeping coordinated. Okay. So back to our progress report on goal 2. Jalen mentioned that we have been in a discovery phase. Part of it also involved learning about our expansive youth services landscape at the city and the county. And we set out to develop an inventory of all of the youth services between the 2 agencies. We wanted it to be more than just a list. We wanted to have more information about how these programs related to each other, where were the gaps, who are we serving, who are we not serving. So the plan was to use a survey to create program profiles and collect standardized information, and then input that data into a free visualization tool called Kumu. And we launched the survey in January of this year after doing a lot of prep work to get all of our ducks in a row for it. And then we had a cyber attack. And then the county had a much longer cyber attack. And then COVID hit. And so priorities have been shifting, and higher priorities are really persisting, COVID-related priorities. It was a lot to continue asking program contacts to really engage in this project and give us the information that we needed. And some of the programs themselves were changing, right? So they were responding to COVID, or they weren't able to function the same way before. And our resources were shifting in our office. So the project has really been delayed this year. And in the new year, we hope to pick this back up and reimagine what makes the most sense of how to proceed from here. But in a related effort, and at the county's request, we worked with the Durham Network of Care, which some of you may know of. It's an online resource inventory managed by Alliance Health. And we reclassified several hundred youth services in their inventory into more user-friendly categories that were kind of more intuitive to users. The categories they had before made it difficult to navigate that website. And we see the users of this inventory being mostly service providers and someone who's able to navigate a website to find resources. So we've done that, and the beta page is live now, and the project will be complete in the early in the new year, at which time we will promote it widely. And so just to show you some screenshots here, on the left is the draft, a screenshot of a draft Kumu map, where you can see the color tabs for a type of category that each program is assigned to. You can see connections by department, and the elements are currently sized by the number of FTEs for that program, whatever is defined as a program. So this is just one way you can sort of slice the data so it can give you some really meaningful information. So we're hopeful that we can complete this project again in whatever way makes sense. And then the second screenshot is of the new Network of Care Youth Services page, which we think is much more user-friendly. And with that, I'll send it to Elise.
Yeah, and so another priority in our office is around connecting young people to resources, right? And so this has the need for this has drastically increased, like once COVID hit our community. And what we were hearing from young people was that they weren't hearing about the resources that were available to them. So we launched a one-way text line for young people under the age of 25 to share resources directly with them. So these text messages are in English and in Spanish, and they're sent a few times a week directly from our office into the phones of young people. This was a pilot year for us, and it has been really successful. So we plan to start to promote this text line more broadly in the new year. We also have a new Instagram page that we use to boost resources for young people, and also the events and opportunities that are happening in our community. This has been, we've had a super fast growing following on the Instagram page. So you all could follow us on Instagram too. It's You Speak Durham. But then we also do want to expand our youth network, right? Our network of young people. It's been really challenging during the pandemic, especially because a lot of our process has been going where young people are gathering, and we can't really do that right now. But we're hoping that again in the new year that we'll be able to really expand this, because this has been an emerging priority for us in the office. And then finally, we've been serving on the DPS Community Schools Institutional Support Team since about 2018. So mostly this is as a thought partner in supporting schools piloting this framework. We'll continue to support the schools and connect them with resources as needs begin to continue to emerge as they from their problem solving teams. And then I'm just going to pass it off to Noria.
And finally, work under this goal also has looked like amplifying the needs and experiences of young people. There are numerous of times, especially over the last year or so, where we had to adapt or pivot to be responsive to emerging needs of young people in Durham. Some of these examples include supporting youth organizers in hosting a summit for school safety, supporting the launch of a new zine to uplift young people who want to speak truth to power through their art, launching an anonymous voice message line for youth to share their virtual learning experiences with Durham Public Schools, and launching the Scene in Quarantine Challenge that asked young people how they wanted to connect with other young people in this time of COVID, and we helped make winning ideas a reality. You know, as far as like next steps, we'll continue to stay connected to the needs of young people in Durham and support spaces where those needs can be uplifted to decision-making communication. I would like to share my team and I deep gratitude and appreciation for your time and attention today. If any of you have any comments or questions, please share.
Thank you so much, y'all, for this presentation. It was really informative, and it's great to hear about all the work that y'all have been doing over the last few months. Yes, I agree with Steve, more escape rooms. This is super fun. Sorry?
When it's safe.
When it's safe, yes, yes. Though they do have virtual ones. I did a virtual escape room. It was weird, but cool. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember Freelon.
Yes, I'm your 365th follower on Instagram. I just wanted to thank Jalen, Nori, Elise. I hear y'all, I see y'all. Just the process, the spirit that you brought to your presentation was really dope. And yeah, I just wanted to thank y'all, and Laura for your it's a testament to your leadership. How amazing that was, and also for me as a new council member and the youngest council member to get that background on what y'all are about was really helpful. You know, the way just some takeaways, just the way you're adjusting, the shifting priorities, the flexibility and visionary leadership. Elise, I'm looking at the artwork behind you. Like, even the way you said, I want to draw something that you said, hey folks, you know, which is an intentional choice of words. And I'm on a lot of boards that, you know, they appoint you to boards as a city council member. And a lot of people use guys as a term to refer to everybody in the Zoom calls. And so when I hear you say, hey folks, you know, not using that term to refer to you know, which only references the men in the room and excludes women and gender nonconforming people. That's like something that I'm doing. I'm making calls and emails to my colleagues on the back end to try to hit them to that. But I peeped that you just brought that. And I think that's the importance of having young people in the room, you know, not just that, but, you know, your lens and the way that you transform systems just by being in them is something that I was really sitting with throughout your presentation. So anyway, I just wanted to big y'all up and present myself as an ally. I know you most of the Durham mailing list, but I would love to be a part of or a resource to y'all in any way possible. And I see you, hear you, and appreciate you very much.
Thank you, council member. Other comments or questions? Councilmember Middleton and then Freeman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Yes to everything Pierce Freelon said. Two things. One, I just want to affirm the utter brilliance of the move of moving this department, this office into the city manager's office and under the aegis of the city manager's office is highly appropriate. I think that's exactly where it belongs, that level of importance and significance. I think it sends the right message to the city as a whole. Secondly, you know, I might offend somebody, but I've sat through a lot of presentations as a council member. This is one of the best presentations I've sat through as a council member. I mean, from the vibrancy of the slides and the way y'all even hand it off to each other. It's like watching the Today Show, you know, just these smooth transitions between each other. And, you know, and if that offends anybody watching, you know, do better. So this is a great presentation. Y'all have a great holiday. Love y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues sharing all of the good points around this presentation and the excitement. I just wanted to note that I am really excited that Durham Children's Initiative had the opportunity to support, being a youth partner and trying to make sure that those youth are connected to the programming. And I just want to make sure that I offer any support, anything needed. Please let me know. And I look forward to what comes ahead, whether virtual or in person. And so I know that you will be creative in what you come up with, and I look forward to seeing what that is.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? Mayor Schul?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. That was an awesome presentation. And yeah, the way you involve adults, at least in my experience, has been completely awesome. When Laura, Ms. Khalil will remember this. One time I was with the group and they were talking about doing a retreat. I don't like retreats, and I made a face. And but the youth in the room said, "Oh, this is going to be a different kind of retreat." And boy, was it ever! I've been to, I guess, the last 2 years, the last 2 years retreats, and they were both fabulous. And they ended in one was the escape room, and then the other was the scavenger hunt through Durham with the silly string and the super fun. And I got to hang out, especially with Councilmember Freeman's kids, which was an awesome day. But I just appreciated, sort of like what Councilmember Middleton was saying, it wasn't your kind of normal experience for a grown-up. And I really appreciated being there, and I'm very grateful for it. I do have a question, which is, when you think ahead about all these things that you're planning to do next year, you got a lot of big plans. What's the number one challenge that you think you face? What would be the biggest impediment? Let's take COVID out of it, because we know that's a huge impediment to everything. But beyond COVID, what would you say, and maybe I'll ask Jalen and Nori if they want to answer this, but what would you say that the thing that would be the biggest impediment to you achieving the goals that you've put forward?
Thank you, Mayor Schul. I can kind of respond to that to the best of my ability. Something just popped up for me, but I feel with the work that we do in our office, you heard in the presentation, it's really partner-based, community-based, and we interact and work with a lot of partners. And I think it's just, for me, I feel like will be maybe one of our biggest challenges, just maybe the buy-in or the engagement from, some of our partners. And there's a lot of factors that could go into it. And I only say that because, I know you said take COVID out of it, but just from just working and just an everyday life type of thing, some people's engagement may be up one day and down the next. So I think it's just a matter of how we plan and move forward, and the buy-in from the community partners that we've already worked with. And I'm pretty sure it'll be high, because like Elise said, everybody's been really excited around the work that we're doing, but I could see that as a potential challenge for us moving forward.
And just to sort of add on to what Jalen was saying, I also think there's sort of two issues we sort of face, and that is gaining trust and reducing barriers. It's, one of the things, and Laura always says this, and it will truly stick with me, is you have to move at the speed of trust. And that's not always easy, especially when you are, doing sort of the work that we're doing. And there's been past things that have happened that haven't instilled trust within the community. But when you're also doing the work that we're doing, there are lots of barriers that come with it within the community. So we're just always trying to make sure that we're doing things with intention and making sure that we can reduce as many barriers as possible so people can trust us and people are able to attend and be a part of whatever we're trying to put out there to the community.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Manager Page is jumping in.
Yes, I try not to jump in too often, but I could not resist jumping in at this time. Just seeing this presentation from a team that historically I've had an opportunity to be directly involved in the manager's office, it just makes my heart smile. So I had to jump in to say that part. But I also wanted to say one of the things that I am very, very proud of is the freedom that I have been able to provide this wonderful team to go out and do what only they can do. And I just wanted to acknowledge that here during this annual presentation.
Thank you so much. I think does anyone else have questions, comments? Did I miss anybody? Great. Thank you all so much. We appreciate your work and the persistence and dedication that you all have put towards this project moving through this year, and looking forward to all the great things you're going to do next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say one more last thing?
Of course.
Thank you so much for the love that you just showered on all of us. It is greatly appreciated. And we will hold that as we enter the holidays and whatever's to come. We know things are probably going to continue getting difficult for our community. And I'll say this is a precursor to hopefully additional conversations. We have a report with 30 recommendations coming out in the new year. And I think to your question, Mayor Schul, that's going to be the hard part. Is like, how do we take what we heard from our young people and turn it into real life and actually address these barriers to success? It's going to take really everyone coming together, our partners, our elected officials, our young people, our community organizations. And so I think that's the hard work, and it's also the exciting work. And so stay tuned and stay ready, because we'll be back in the new year to talk with you all some more about that. And thank you for your time and attention, and happy New Year, happy holidays.
Happy New Year. Thank you. All right. We have one more presentation, I believe, from our finance department, city contractor workforce diversity. And I see David Boyd and Fred Lamar. Am I turning this over to Mr. Boyd?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem David
Boyd,
Finance Director. I'm here with Fred from the City Attorney's Office, basically in response to all of you's ongoing questions, concerns about how we can encourage companies that we do business with to hire a diverse workforce. Really through a really great effort led by Fred in the Attorney's Office, along with some folks from purchasing in my department, with some folks from the Equity Inclusion Department, as well as those departments that do the bulk of the contracting, general services, public works, water management. We think we've come up with a comprehensive approach that will better enable us to incorporate our collective values around diverse hiring practices into our contracting process within the really very real constraints of the law. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Fred. He's going to walk through the presentation, and we'll answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, David, and good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'm going to proceed to share my screen here. Here we go. Okay. And you should be seeing a PowerPoint presentation.
Yep, we've got it.
Okay. I got to minimize my view of myself there. So so this is an update and discussion of proposed initiatives that came out of, as David said, some meetings with different departments. We created a working group. The members of the working group included representatives from the E&I department, finance, public works, general services, water management, and myself from City Attorney's Office. All these departments are pretty involved and sophisticated in contracting and procurement, and each one of them had at least one or multiple representatives to go through and discuss the objectives of the group. We had multiple meetings. We As the working group, we had particular objectives. The summary of those objectives are one, understanding the purpose behind requesting what we are commonly referring to as workforce statistics. That's part of the E104 form. We also wanted to understand and emphasize workforce diversity over workforce statistics. And what does that mean? How do we motivate and encourage contractors to make efforts at having a diverse workforce as opposed to trying to determine workforce statistics, which frankly we do not have, and I'll elaborate on that in a couple of slides. Then we wanted to be able to articulate the public benefits of promoting workforce diversity among city contractors. That's important because we're going to ask for information of contractors. We need to have a public purpose, a public benefit behind that, and that's an important element of the proposal. Finally, we wanted to create better tools for the staff to inform the staff on how to make their recommendations to either the city manager or the city council, but also to inform the city council with regard to contractor efforts to create and maintain a diverse workforce. So first I need to talk to you about the problems that we have with what I think is the current tool, and what I've described as a poor tool in trying to do what I believe the council and the city administration really wants to do, and that is the E104 form, and that y'all have seen. The history behind this form is not well known. We know that we've been collecting it over 20 years. That being said, there's no clear guidance or direction provided on how the information that's provided on the form should be evaluated. The following jurisdictions do not request the form. This is based on my own informal survey, but Raleigh, Charlotte, Greensboro, Greenville, and Asheville do not request this type of form from their contractors. The only of the large cities that I contacted, Winston-Salem was the only one that had a summary, basically a line that gave percentages of demographics, but not the kind of detailed table that we require. As I stated, this form is something that's traditionally been housed with the E&I forms. That being said, even though the EBOP ordinance, which is the Equal Business and Opportunity Program ordinance, does not cover at all workforce diversity in any way at all. It's not part of the UBE or MWBE program, which really emphasizes the city's promotes the city in contracting with UBEs and disadvantaged minority and women-owned businesses, and that's the owners. The focus is on who owns the business, and that's the way that the EBOP ordinance is oriented, is that it looks at historic practices of the city based on pretty detailed disparity studies, and based on those disparity studies comes up with a recommendation of goals that are recommended that we should be able to reach, and that's where we request those goals when we when we go through the procurement process, and we require contractors to at least show a good faith that they try to reach those goals if they fail to do that. The point being that that program is different, very different from what workforce diversity is in contracting. So again, as I stated, the E104 form is made part of the EBOP program procurement forms. To continue, the issue and concern that I have with this form is that it's really a snapshot. It's not statistics. It's only a single data point. It does not give you a history of employment hiring. As best as I can tell, the E104 appears to be identical to the EEO1 form that's required by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And that form is something that is required of only firms of 100 or more employees. It's also submitted annually so that the EEOC has a history collection, statistics on actual employment makeups, and that information is used to collect employment data to analyze employment patterns in support of civil rights enforcement. And the reason that when there is an enforcement, they can kind of look to see, look, do we have some indirect information or indication? And by the way, it's also not, the EEOC is prohibited by US law to share this information publicly. Someone in the public cannot make a public records request for these forms. So those are, I'm going into a lot of detail as to what the form, the E104 form that we use, that it, from my estimation, it was borrowed from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, but without the context, without the functionality, without the purpose or authority. So continuing, there's this form, looking at the form alone, it's not going to give you an acid test for, is this firm diverse or is it not diverse? That's another serious concern. For example, what I have is some examples of forms. In this form, I filled this out myself, but here's an example of a small firm that would not be diverse at all, although it is all Hispanic. Why would that be the case? Perhaps it's a family-owned business, don't know, but this firm would be a good firm to have from the standpoint of contracting directly with the city as part of the UBE, the EBOP program. That's the kind of issue the EBOP program cares about. But if we're looking at workforce diversity in this case, we would find this firm to be not diverse, which doesn't really help us in trying to accomplish, I think, what the goal of the administration and the city council is. Here's another form. This is my take on the perfect diverse form, which shows you sort of I'm not trying to be funny or anything, but really to be perfectly diverse, you'd want to have equal numbers for every category that we've identified in this table. So again, what are some of the factors that we know can influence workforce diversity and our desire to hire a, quote, diverse workforce, contractor with a diverse workforce? Clearly, the number of employees. If you have a lot of employees, you're doing more frequent hiring. You might have a variety of different job types. It's easier for you to have a more diverse workforce if you are larger, rather than being smaller, like the example I gave. The variety in the job types, as I mentioned, influence how easily you can maintain and create a diverse workforce. What industry or skill level requirements do you have as an employer? That also may limit or reduce your ability to have a diverse workforce or impact that ability. Also, where are you located? What's your hiring pool? That's a concern. So I mentioned frequency of hiring. Seasonal hiring, a construction company that has a lot of employees during the summer months is going to look a lot different than the winter months. So that snapshot, that's the problem with the snapshot, in my opinion. It doesn't tell you if this firm is trying to create a diverse workforce, or at least making efforts to the extent that it can make efforts. So why emphasize efforts to have a workforce, diverse workforce? Well, I think that's where the real public benefit, public purpose comes. If we can emphasize or ask contractors about their hiring practices in efforts that they make to be diverse, some of the benefits are, we know from research that companies with more diverse workforces tend to be more and productive than a homogeneous company. Now, like I said before, there's no clear line as to like when does that firm become diverse and productive. It's just a correlation. But the point is that we do know that a more diverse workforce tends to be more innovative, more productive, which means a better contract for the city of Durham. Also, if a company with a diverse workforce, if it has a diverse workforce, there's a very good chance it's going to look a lot like Durham's population and workforce, because we are a diverse location and we have a diverse workforce. The benefit is of course, is that if a contractor needs to hire locally, it's going to tend to hire from across a representative demographics of the Durham population, which is in our public interest, which is what we want if they are going to be hiring locally. So what are ways that we can promote these contractors to have a diverse workforce? We already established that we have good public purpose reasons to try to promote contractors. Well, one way is to require all contractors with 10 or more employees to respond to a questionnaire on diverse hiring practices. I said 10 or more because I think that the group felt like smaller, it's just really difficult to analyze or evaluate a small firm and try to critique them for not looking diverse. So the desire is to focus on a larger firm, not 100 or more, but we came up with 10. The other issue is that it's a little bit onerous to have to fill out a questionnaire, and we already know how onerous our RFPs can be, but this can be yet another few pieces of paper that every contractor is going to have to fill out. So that's asking a lot. At any rate, the other way to promote workforce diversity is to create a summary of the contractor responses to the agenda memo, along with the employee breakdown. When I say employee breakdown, I'm actually talking about the table. I don't call it statistics. I would take that word out of it because it's not statistics. But at any rate, the idea being that to provide context to any table that the council may want to still see in a memo, or the city manager, this summary of the responses of the contractor to our questionnaire will give an explanation, provide information to the decision maker on awarding a contract, as well as the staff, frankly, when they're making the recommendation. Finally, we created a workforce diversity scoring worksheet that can be used as part of contractor selection and as part of an evaluation tool. And that would be with RFPs. I will go into more detail about that in just a couple slides. But the idea being that in talking to staff, and the working group was very reticent about having to make a call themselves as to whether or not this entity, they thought this entity was diverse, even with the questionnaire, was sufficiently diverse or not. And so what I did with the assistance of the group was create a questionnaire based on weighting I created a worksheet based on the questions. And rather than talk about it, I'll show it to you in just a couple slides. So I've left this almost to the end, which is the elephant in the room, the statutory obstacles. Clearly, we are, as has been discussed during this entire meeting today, we are hamstrung by what our procurement, both on a state, federal level, that we have. And so the question is, what authority does the city have to reject a bidder proposer for disappointing workforce diversity? I put in quotes, disappointing, because that sort of lends to the difficulty in this making an acid test determination. Are you or aren't you sufficiently diverse? But at any rate, it's understandable the city may want to still weigh workforce diversity. But the least flexible area that we have is in the area of purchases and construction and repair. And those are the types of contracts where the award must be based on the lowest price among responsive bids. So what options do we have in that case? So hands completely tied? No. One option is to reject all bids. The manager, the council has authority to say, you know what? I don't want to award to this low bidder. I just don't like it. I'm going to reject all bids. We have the authority to do that for any reason. You don't need a reason. But the only problem with that is that actually I'm mentioning part B. I'm going to go back to part A in just a second. But the only problem about rejecting all bids is that you might get the same low bidder when you go back out and resolicit. Part A is you can reject a bidder for failing to respond to the information. As I said before, it's that I would argue that the questionnaire and the information we're requesting is a defensible public purpose. And if we require it as part of your questionnaire and the contractor says, I'm not going to fill this out, I'm not going to waste my time, we can reject that bidder outright for non-responsiveness. The area of most flexibility we have are in the area of service contracts. And those are when someone says an RFP or an RFQ, those are requests for proposals or requests for qualifications. Those are service contracts. So this is where we can imbue the selection criteria that's currently used with an additional factor. That factor of, do we, based on our objective evaluation of your responses to the questionnaire, we're going to give you more points for being more apparently diverse than having a more diverse workforce than the next guy. So the idea is that you would get points. So this is where this uniform evaluation measure might come in, and it would be weighed, like I say, along with price as a factor, prior experience, general qualifications, recommendations, and it would be an added factor of your measure of diversity as measured by our questionnaire. So what does the questionnaire look like? Well, first of all, it requires the contractor to list and respond to ways it has made efforts to hire a diverse workforce. These questions should not be new to the council. These are very much the same questions that are asked on a regular basis by council and by the city manager's office when they encounter a table, an employee breakdown table that just doesn't look right, doesn't look good. We're, instead of waiting till we're ready to award the contract, these questions will come to the contractor as part of the application process. So we have them in front of us when we're evaluating the RFP type documentation. The questionnaire also requires the contractor to provide its own explanation as to why it believes the workforce is or is not diverse. And this goes to the context. Is there something about this employer that the city manager should know or the city council should know before they pass judgment on a snapshot of their employee appearance, the appearance of their employee workforce. It also requires the contractor to complete the table. So we still have the table, and I refer to it as a diversity breakdown table. Let's see if I can, I'm going to have to ask, do you all see the questionnaire? Can someone tell me? It's probably no.
No, we don't see it. You're trying to click on that link.
Yeah, I did click on it.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and let me go. I'm gonna. Oh, geez. Okay, I was afraid of this here. I'm gonna stop sharing, then I'm gonna share again. If you don't, if that's all right, if you all have patience for this. Okay.
Fred, I do think that the documents were included in their packet, so.
They probably were. So, and I mean, I provide the link just kind of, I'm not going to read through it. That's something that y'all can certainly do. But again, the idea is it lists a number of questions that are, again, questions that we have been asking. What are the efforts? What are the things that you do? Do you hire by mouth only? That's a problem. But then we have a place for the questionnaire. And then we also provide the contractor with a list of resources that the contractor can use if it feels like it's not doing an adequate job and maybe in the future wants to. We provide that. Then there's the section here that's the template memo that is intended to be inserted with the agenda memo to give the background on how that contractor responded to the questionnaire. And again, the reason why I created this sort of form template so it would look very much the same every time just based on the responses and require less work of the the staff in creating that. So now I'm going to go back to the presentation. I'm going to share that, and it's only a couple more pages. Thank you very much for your patience, of course, in this here. Okay, oops, there. Okay, so then I mentioned this diversity scoring worksheet tool. This is something that was created for, in the case of service contracts, where where the city may want to give extra points for what is determined to be a more diverse workforce. And so I went through and asked the participants of the working group to score the questions, not the table, just other questions that would reflect on the significance of whether or not that question was meaningful in determining the contractor's efforts at having a diverse workforce. And so now I got to go to the link, which means I got to stop sharing and then share again. I'm doing this very smoothly, of course, here. The reason why I'm being silenced, I had to click on that link here. Okay. Okay, so do you see the worksheet? Can I ask?
Yeah, we see it.
Yes. Okay. So here's the work. So it's again designed. It's a one-page worksheet. It's designed to allow staff to provide responses. You might get a 0 if you fail to do anything, or 1 through whatever the maximum is. The maximum points you could score would be 100. But the idea is you would use this as one, weighted in your RFP. It might represent 20% of the final criteria, if you wanted, or 15%, whatever the staff or administration felt was appropriate. And so now I think, frankly, I think I just have like one slide left here. Okay, so next step. So what would be required is really to formalize a city policy for implementing the use of the questionnaire and the approach. I would, with the city attorney's office and finance, would work together in drafting that and having it reviewed internally. It would provide, the public purpose and the policy. It would explain when and how to the staff the questionnaire is to be used. It will provide guidance on how to incorporate information from the questionnaire as part of the recommendation of board, when it appears, for example, in the memo to council or to the manager for recommendation of award, and provide guidance on conditions when bids should be rejected for failure to provide substantive responses, and then describe the procedure for using the workforce diversity scoring worksheet in the evaluation process of service contracts. Okay, that's my presentation, or that's our presentation today.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. I think that it gets to the point of what we're trying to do, which is encourage our contractors to increase their diversity, and also, deals with all those legal constraints. And it's a really tricky thing, what we're trying to do. So we appreciate y'all bringing this back to us and putting so much thought into it. I'm sure folks have questions. So yeah, Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. This was excellent. I appreciate all the examples included in our packet. Is this an opportunity for council to share feedback on the questions and whatnot as well? Yeah, okay. So yeah, I would like 2 questions added if possible. One would be, do you have an official talent identification and recruitment and retention policy as a business? I feel like we get a lot of folks who kind of come up to us befuddled about, well, we don't, like, there's magical unicorns that are not accessible for all kinds of people. And I used to do this professionally. And if you spend the money, you find the talent. It's just not that hard. And so I think that it would be helpful, even if they don't, because it could prompt thinking, right? on behalf of those businesses to say, oh yeah, we don't actually have a policy. Maybe it's worth doing that. And secondly, I think it would be helpful to ask, have you ever hired professional services to help you create or implement official recruitment and retention strategies as a business? So those are my comments. Again, really appreciate it. I think this is an excellent step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. While we're on the language question, can I also add that it would be great to change. I don't know if this is legally relevant, the use of the term minority. I know that there are a lot of programs like through the state and the federal government that use the term minority, but I would prefer if we use the term people of color. And that also, when we're referring to women, that there might also be people who identify outside of gender binary, and I don't really know how to incorporate that, but wanted to bring it up. Other questions, comments? Councilmember Freeman?
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I was trying to gather my thoughts so I wouldn't be rambling for an hour. Just acknowledging, taking a step back. I know I made the initial request for these data statistics to be included with our packets. And I want to be clear in stating that it was not about diversity. It was specific to the issues around equity. And so acknowledging that early on, I want to say, I think we've had previous conversations, but the city, I feel like, has been across the country, cities have been stuck in the kind of conundrum of what the civil rights presents as equal opportunity. And I continue to have this issue because racial equity, as we talk about it, and equity in general, is not about equal. It's acknowledging that there's been a deficit for some that hasn't been in place for others. And this is a great step. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate all the work that you're putting in based on our current guidelines, which are in place federally and by the state. I think this is a good way forward, but we're not going to get to equity or inclusion, as Mayor Pro Tem indicated, with including even non-binary folks in the conversation if we don't push. And so I just want to make sure that I make the point that even though it's not legally permissible to make a decision based on whether or not they have people of color on staff, it is important that we at least look at it and make sure that the public can see who is not employing people equitably. And so whether it's an RFP or a, I think you mentioned it, hold on, or specifically in purchases, construction, or repair, it's important to at least be able to say, or ask the question even, what is your process? Because I think where I part with staff on this conversation is that we need to ask everyone, and we need to be able to investigate how the dollars that we're spending in our city matter to the people who are here. And hold on one second. And so just noting that this is an important issue for me. I mean, it's probably one that I probably get the most outraged about. But the fact that we're focusing on diversity is frustrating to me, because the diversity is of the 60s. We're in 2020, and we're not getting to diversity because of the constructs of how this was all set up from hundreds of years ago. It's not going to change if we don't push. And so I want to encourage the staff to acknowledge that when we talk about equity, it is acknowledging that there has been a deficit. And so yes, and we need to make sure that we push on the statutory authority, how we can, where we can. And so I know in this legislative agenda, there wasn't anything specific to this, but please, in your conversations, if you're coming up with concepts or ideas, if you don't put that forward, I don't know enough detail in your level of work in the finance department and equity and inclusion to really say what that should be. And so I would appreciate having more information than not. because I'm not looking for a way to smooth this over and make it okay so we don't get a lawsuit. I'm looking for a way to make sure that the system is investigated so that it changes and shifts to include equity and inclusion, because we can't stop at diversity. And I'll leave it at that.
If I can make one comment about that, council member. The intention is to ask the questions of everyone and to include the information in agenda memos for you for everything that comes forward to you. But then legally right now, we're only able to use that information in terms of an evaluation criteria for an award on the RFP service contract. So you will still, you can be assured that we will be gathering the information from everyone. And if they do not respond, then we could reject them because they were not responsive and didn't give us all the information we asked for.
And I note that we did that in the recent city manager search process, and I get that. The other piece of that, and I appreciate you making that clarification. If this is, hold on, I had another. So in order to move this forward, I think then, well, I guess it's the next conversation in how, and I want to say that I want to be careful what I say as much as possible, but I am really interested in how we set goals internally so that we're looking at ways to increase our vendors, not just on the kind of contract side, but also in acknowledging that there's supports that we can put in place to actually have students moving in tracks along the lines with Durham Tech partnerships towards the areas we've identified that there is no diversity. And I've had those conversations with some in the community, and I know that has not happened here, but I mean, I would love to really dig into this a lot more detailed in the weeds. And I'm acknowledging that it's a late. We've been in this meeting for over 3 hours, and so I'm not going to keep pushing at it, but I do want to make sure that I did let staff know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I am excited. But I feel like we've got a lot more to go, so much more. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And thank you, Fred and Dave, for this great report. And let me say at the outset, you are responding exactly and precisely to what the council has asked you to do. So the comments I'm about to make have nothing to do with you falling short, or we talked about this, you heard us, you brought us this back, you did exactly what we asked you to do. But I do want to use Councilor Freeman's comments as an on-ramp and a springboard, because I'm wondering, and I noticed in your next steps that you're going to be working in concert with the city attorney's office. And I'm wondering if there need to be some more people at the table, precisely based upon what Councilor Freeman has said, because I think she really captures the sentiment and the animating proposition behind our equity work as a city. Respectfully, we've been talking about the benefits of having a diverse workforce since the mid-20th century. So anybody that's been in business in America, since the 80s or before, has heard the talking points about how it benefits you to have Black folk and Latino folk and others on your workforce, and women on your workforce. I think what's important through the equity lens, and Councilor Freeman has touched upon this, and what we're really interested in is, and you can have a number of Black or brown people of color on your workforce, and they might be well paid, but the wealth is with the owner of the company, the true wealth, generational wealth. And we not only want diversity within companies, we want diverse companies as well, bidding for these contracts. So I'm wondering if in your consult with and this is more for my colleagues, gentlemen, I'm wondering in consulting with the city attorney's offices, this should be really a larger effort involving Built to Last and our shared economic prosperity plan as well at the table, and talks about this policy, because it's almost like we're working on two tracks. One, we want diversity within the usual suspects that get contracts with the city. And then on the other track, we want diverse vendors, period. More or women-owned, non-binary, non-gender conforming folk owned, people of color owned companies also bidding for those contracts alongside the usual ones who get the contracts, who may have just gone out and hired 3 black folk and now they're, or brown folk or women, and now they're in compliance or they look better, but it's still the same people getting the wealth. It's still the same company that have generationally accrued wealth based upon historic inequities. So I commend you because we asked you to do it and you did it, but I'm wondering, colleagues, if we may need to incorporate the finance department's overtures towards the city attorney's office or working with the city attorney's office into the larger efforts that's going on with our shared economic prosperity plan with Built to Last, because there seems to be some organic and natural overlap in this work. And rather than us work on 2 tracks, I think Councilor Freeman has put her finger on something, that this should be part of our larger, more comprehensive approach to equity, rather than just, the finance department giving us guidance on diversity within vendors. This is part of a larger universe, I think, of effort on the part of our city. So thank you so much for what you've done, but I would recommend that we start thinking about this a little more globally, a little more universally. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other thoughts, friends? Mayor Schul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and I really appreciate the comments of my colleagues. I do want to really appreciate the work of Mr. Lamar and Mr. Boyd and the folks in the finance department. I mean, one of the things about this is, to me, is that all the questions that we ask all the time, this kind of haphazard, ad hoc way, you all have taken them and you've listened to what we do at every council meeting, every work session, and you've made them into, you've incorporated them into the process in a systematic way that everybody gets asked those questions, and it's all, it's done all the time, and it's done in a way that we don't have to do this kind of ad hoc asking. So that's great. But I think the thing that, to me, this represents that's really super important is that since I've been on the council and before I've been on the council, I've heard so many times we ask about these figures, but there's no, once we got them, there's no teeth, there's nothing we can do about it. And what you've done is you've told us the way in which this can have teeth, and you've parsed it for us and for yourselves that, there's certain contracts that we don't have the legal right to do that, but you've stretched to find the way in which those many contracts in which we can legally actually use workforce diversity as an actual scoring, as part of the actual scoring for an RFP contract. To me, that's a huge advance. And I don't want to lose sight of it, in the pursuit of other larger, super important goals. I think my colleagues are right in that, thinking, for example, about the extending, the wealth building and the kinds of things that we do through our EBOP ordinance and our, Ms. Giles's department. That's expanding that work and making that better is really important. But this is something we've been pounding, and you did it. I mean, I think you really have taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and systematized it and made it into something that's going to matter in scoring an RFP. This is the first time in the history of the city that we've been able to do that, and I really want to appreciate it. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other thoughts or comments, council members? All right, thanks, y'all. So is this, are we deciding to use this moving forward? What's the next step?
The next step is we'll incorporate some of the feedback we got from you on the questions, and then just administratively we'll be adopting the policy and then be incorporating this in future agenda memos and as part of future RFP criteria once we've got the policy in place and ironed out whatever little details we haven't already thought about. And we'll make sure that you all know when you can expect to see that change in the stuff that comes to you. So you'll know when we have used this information as part of the recommendation for award on service contracts.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. All right. Is that our last presentation, friends? The moment at the end of the meeting where we ask our city clerk, I'm sorry, Manager Page.
I was about to try to set the agenda.
Okay. So let's do our appointments and then settle the agenda. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I wanted to make this quick because I know it's getting late. Our Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment, Council's nominated Anthony F. Patterson to the position of North Carolina Central University Liaison. The Durham City County Appearance Commission, there was a tie in the nomination. 3 votes for Kira D. Robinson and 3 votes for Dan Harrop. And then 1 person had decided to re-advertise. So that person can break the tie, and that was Mayor Schul.
Sure, I'm happy to break the tie. My second choice was Mr. Harrop.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And then the final one, there's a Raleigh Durham Airport Authority appointment, and everyone has reached consensus to re-advertise that position. And that is my report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, and I think we are now ready to settle the agenda.
Good afternoon. This time not too quick, but I would like to present for your consent agenda items 1 through 4, item number 6, and items 8 through 18, and general business agenda public hearings, items 22 through 26.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeland, seconded by Councilmember Reese. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero?
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon?
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I believe we've concluded our business for the day. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a fabulous holiday and Happy New Year. We'll see you all in 2021.
Happy holidays, everybody.
We did it.
Thanks for presiding, Jillian. I was worn out.
Happy to, anytime. Just give me a little poke. Jump in there. Bye, y'all.
Take care. Be well, everybody.